Welcome everyone here today. See some familiar faces. I'm glad I didn't do much business with you, Chief.
Indeed.
There are people in this
Always
room.
friends, Pat.
They're always friends. They're okay. You know, in the military, you got a good conduct medal after 3 years of good conduct. But among the Marines, we said 3 years you didn't get caught. But that was then.
I got it.
Okay. Welcome, our chief and other visitors and staff here today. I want to ask our chief to lead us in the pledge, if you would, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask Ms. Bobo if she would come forward.
Yeah, Pat, you have to approve the agenda first.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, before we have a motion to approve the agenda, I'm going to move 8.3 to the top of action items. So it'll just be 8.3 and then we'll fall in line with 8.1. Okay, with that change, approval of the agenda? Second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Long and seconded by Mr. Martin. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. Ms. Bevel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent Stevens, members of the Board of Education, and guests, it is my honor to award the Champion for Education Golden Apple to a true friend of Berkeley County Schools. The apple has long served as an expression of respect and gratitude for those who have helped guide us, shape us, and have made a difference in our lives. You may also recognize the apple as a long-standing symbol of education. It is only suitable to bestow the Champion for Education honor on an individual who voluntarily impacted the lives of our school children by giving of their professional and personal time, talent, and resources. Retired Chief of Police George Swartwood is a product of Berkeley County Schools and a graduate of Martinsburg High School. On Sunday, April 15, 1984, George began a long and dedicated law enforcement career in his hometown, serving the people in the community that raised him. This alone can speak to his desire to serve and lead our community. In June of 2020, George became Chief of Police. A review of his civic resume indicates movement through the ranks as a patrolman, detective, detective sergeant, detective lieutenant, detective captain, deputy chief, and chief of police. George retired this past June, and while we know he was absolutely visible in our city schools, we valued his participation in our Oveas County events and our school safety demonstrations. However, he is probably most proud of the Handle with Care program that thrived under his leadership. When preparing my comments for this evening, I struggled not knowing what to call you, having not seen you in anything but a uniform. And I mean no disrespect. Plus, I know you are not a man operating under the significance of a title, but more about the work of your leadership position. So retired Police Chief George Swartwood, Berkeley County Schools honors and thanks you for your service to our community and most especially to our students. Tonight we recognize you as a champion for education, an award to express our respect for you and thank you for your generosity and support of Berkeley County Schools.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to ask our superintendent.
Say a couple words. George,
Sir.
it was the summer
Uh-oh.
of 2001. Summer of 2001, my first year working in Berkeley County. I was thrust into action, came from Ohio with 3 little kids and a wife, and was thrust into action here and thought that I was going to have the summer to prepare and get to know the area. And got here on a Sunday, went to work Monday as a summer school principal. It was during that time, whether you remember it or not, it was during that time that our paths crossed for the first time, and I thought, man, this is a guy who makes you want to be around him, you know. And then I thought, maybe that's not so good for the criminals, you know. Maybe they're getting in trouble just to see this guy. And I know better than that. After a great year working at Martinsburg High School, my career path took me to the south end of the county, and I was more involved with county law enforcement for almost a decade. I then came back into the central office in a role with pupil services, where I was going to be working with students who are in need, students who were having behavior issues, trying to track down students, a whole variety of things in the pupil services department. Every single one of those things led me to you. When something happened around here and I needed to ask a question, I would contact him. And it seemed like our relationship really started to just rolled from there. And after a decade of us working together, it was not uncommon for a threat to be made on social media after midnight. And they always seem to come after midnight. And it was not uncommon for me to reach out. And whom did I reach out to? I had to reach out to you. And much like Miss Bobo, when she said, "Don't know what to call you," I never struggled with that. You know, to everybody else it was Chief or George or or whatever. But for me, it was Big Dog. It's Big Dog. It will forever be Big Dog, because whenever something was needed, we could contact you for your assistance. And again, it didn't matter if it was at 2 a.m. or when the buses were unloading at school or when they're unloading at home or anywhere in between. I appreciate your service to the community. I appreciate your service to our students. You've made this place a better place, and I think that you'll continue to do that in retirement. I know that your number has not been deleted from my phone. And if anybody steals my phone and can figure out my password to get in, if you want to contact him, you have to look up Big Dog. So, just so you know. Anyway, having said all of that, I wanted to take this opportunity to present to you this golden apple, so that you
There's
can.
a whole lot of Lane didn't tell me about this.
Yes. And she wasn't allowed.
Nah.
So,
Pick it out.
for the champion for education, I wanted to say one more time, thank you. And every time you look at that apple, you can think of all the students that you served here in Berkeley County. So
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Amen. Absolutely. Sure.
I suspect they want me to move.
Wow. Move in here.
All right, I'm gonna get a couple. Oh, nice. Thank you.
Thanks. Ron, thank you.
You got everybody?
Please. Jack, you gotta let me get one in there with you and Pat, or Lisa will beat me when I get home. I didn't take pictures with you.
Yeah, that's, often we say, will you just come be my guest at the
Step
board
up
meeting?
there
You don't
with them.
tell them what they're coming for.
Ron, will they see you?
I'll
You all
stand
good?
in between.
Here we go.
All right.
We're good.
1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Pat, thank you, sir. Thanks, sir.
George,
You're welcome, sir. I still got your whistle too.
that's right.
Thanks, sir.
When Elaine was reading about the list of involvement, our city police department, I can remember as a kid, it was Seth Jenkins from the city
Sure.
police that started
Mhm. Mike said.
the Boys Club.
Mhm.
It's just a long history of not just trying to apprehend, but comprehend and assist kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't thank y'all, if I could have just a word, and I'll go. I can't thank you all enough I had no idea. Elaine, was a lot you didn't tell me. I thought it was about an overdue book from the 7th grade.
Yeah.
I was getting called in.
Well, that too.
Yeah, well, hope you take a check.
Interest.
But you all have been, in my opinion, in 39 years that I've been a police officer, this is the best board I've seen. I'm by far. This is the best board out here going. Elaine, you've always been a standout. Ron Big Dog Stevens, he's absolutely right. At 2 in the morning, I could call him and he'd call me. We took every threat that threatened our kids very, very serious. We would end it before 8 in the morning, before school started. We would track it down. I'd reach out to the FBI, I'd reach out to the task force to run a computer threat down. We would run that threat down, assess it, whether it was legit or not, before 8 in the morning. And then even after that, and we would always put an officer out there at that school, because I know how it goes with social media. It's like wildfire. It's everywhere as soon as it starts. So parents are always concerned, and you should be concerned about your kids. One thing, coming up through public schools, it's been great. I've had the benefit of all public schools. Went to John Street Elementary, went to South Middle School, go Trojans, went to Martinsburg High, go Bulldogs, went a little bit to Shepherd, go Rams. I'm from here. But it's been a great ride, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. And as a superintendent, I'm so happy that you made that, Ron. That's the right choice. That's the right choice. But this is something very special to me. It really is. And I've always thought, as a chief of police, our children are our future. They're the most outstanding thing out there that we have. And I've always believed they're our kids. All of them. They're our kids. And everything we could do to protect them, everything we could do to nurture them, everything we could do to bring them along their path later in life, we need to do. And you all are a fine example of all of it. And Elaine, I owe you. Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so much.
I would like to say a couple of words about George.
Uh-oh.
Because I've known George since he worked in the grocery store with my husband at that time.
Uh-oh.
So that's been years and years and years
At
ago.
Cressler's, you're right,
Yes.
ma'am.
And so I've known him forever, and to see where he went up the ranks, and, you know, I've always had him on speed dial because I was fortunate enough to, Lisa worked in the system, and we kept good contact, but, you know, not only what he's done for the school system, I have him on speed dial, and I live in the city now, so I just called George whenever I had any issues, but he took care of everything all the time, so we knew we could always count on him, and I've talked to him, and he's not gonna stay out of the wood, you know, he's
No, I
gonna
got
be
some things I
involved,
want.
so, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. You've always been a blessing. You've always been so good to me and Lisa and my family. You've been great. Hey, my number was always the same. When I left PD, I told them, you can take my email, you can take the computer. I was never really good on the computer anyway, but you're not getting my phone. I need my phone and my contacts because they have like 750 or 780 contacts in the phone from everyone in this area. So my phone's my phone. You need me, hit me up.
Well, you know, we have
And
a
that
new,
goes out for any of
we
y'all.
do have a new chief, but you will not be replaced.
I appreciate that. He's a good man.
Yes,
He's
he
a good
is.
man. Aaron's a good man. He'll do very, very well.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We do not have any citizens signed up to speak at the forum, so we will go to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second?
Second.
Okay. I want to point out that the grading system, the marking system policy IHA is going out, and I've already talked to Mr. Stevens about 18546, Dr. Schooley. Please make sure that both sections of that are in the law, in the policy. One says you can't force people to change grades, and the second part says that it's the teacher who makes the primary decision.
I think it's a clear policy, but I read it.
Okay, well, just making sure. Okay, further discussion on the approval of the agenda. You had a transfer policy, but I didn't see it in Friday's.
The notes in there, that was the wrong letters for the policies. We need to remove that one from consent agenda.
Okay, so
610.
610 will be removed. Okay, so the 9 items remaining on that agenda, along with the approval. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have it. We will consider that unanimously passed. Monitoring items. Mr. Stevens. Or bond project status updates.
We're gonna have, some discussion today. The updates would be involving our, what we're gonna talk about a little bit later on. So, rather than talk about it twice,
Okay.
we'll forego that until we get an opportunity to have a presentation today.
Okay, moving on, under action items, I've moved 8.3 up. I'm going to make a motion that we, and I talked this over with council, move to set aside the same item that was adopted at the last meeting. That was under, that was labeled on the last agenda on the 26th of June, item 11.4, it was security camera systems. Without going into much detail, I just want to point out to the board that we're going to have to reverse the previous vote because we're going to be voting on 8.3 today, and it's awarding the camera system to a different bidder. There was a mistake found the last time, and council advises to replace it out for bid.
Rebid.
And so I move that we set aside the action of the 26th of June, item number 11.5, security camera system bid. That's my motion. Now I have a second. Okay, any questions about the motion or the thing? All those in favor of setting aside the action taken on the 26th for a security camera system, item number 11.4, signify by saying aye. Okay. And then while we're on it, we'll go ahead and adopt the this will be item number 8.3.
Okay.
Ms. Davis, you have the floor.
Thank you, George. Yes, sir.
I am Randy Davis, I'm the coordinator for maintenance. As you had mentioned before, there was a discrepancy on the previous bid, so we did put it out for bid again. This time, we went through everything, it looks like everything is good, it was a little bit cheaper this time. Now it looks like it is going to Atlantic Security. It looks like the total bid for all 4 high schools was $354,906. For all 6 middles, it was $485,730. For the 6 intermediate schools, it was $305,928. And then there is a selected number of elementary schools that will be getting new systems, and that was $228,416, making all 21 projects $1,374,980. So we're putting that forward to the board to approve at this time.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve item number 8.3, the security camera systems to Atlantic Security for a total of $1,374,980? Second? Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Martin, seconded by Ms. Long. Just one comment. We need to start utilizing the contracted services, the architect in particular, on further projects so that they can have a review of what we're doing. We also are involving our council in that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have any more of these projects? I think we've pretty well exhausted the list.
We've exhausted the large list, but I'm sure that there'll be some smaller ones that come forward, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm not finding fault with anyone here, but if this bidding process isn't adhered to, it can cause a lot of problems for this board. I believe, Ms. Long, you're more familiar with this than I am. While I'm thinking about, Ms. Power, are you in attendance?
I am.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you before we got into it this far. Do you have anything you want to question or say? Because
I guess my bigger concern is what was sent out for an RFP and why was it not, I guess, evaluated against the, bids that did come in? Like, I guess the glaring question is what got missed, what got skipped? I mean, skipped is a loose word. I mean, I know we all, have a lot on our plate to do, so I'm just trying to figure out what happened
Okay.
that we're back here revisiting them.
Okay, well, I can answer that. The company that won the original bid, they gave us the specifications for the cameras that they had bid, and all of them met the criteria. What they did, though, is in another place in the proposal, they listed a scope of work as to what they were going to list as installing. Basically, they switched out the cameras. I don't know if they went off of an old proposal and just made a typo or what they did, but basically they listed the first camera that met the specifications, and then below that, they listed a lower quality camera. So that was the reason why, because we had the spec sheets, we had everything, and that was what it was. But then there was a discrepancy. I believe, Ms. Powers, did you receive the paperwork from the discrepancy that was?
Yeah, we all do.
Yes, I
Okay.
did.
Okay.
one other question for you, Ms. Davis. There was travel charges listed on the sheet here that I'm looking at, and it wasn't filled in.
It was, but it was filled in the other box. It was on the first box. It said plus for mileage. That was where it was put in.
Okay, and the, that would have dramatically increased the price of the service for every
Yes.
call, because they had listed down here 4-hour minimum.
But we also employ an in-house staff that works on all of our security and fire alarms. So we figured that once the initial warranty period was over, we would not utilize that company, we'd use our own in-house
Yeah.
staff.
I was gonna say at those hours, you
Yeah.
might not wanna utilize them beforehand, but that's
Yeah,
past.
no, that company has done other work for us in the county on other systems that were put in place before I came along, and
Okay.
their charges are quite high, yes.
Okay, so the error being pointed out to us has saved us money as well as a
It
lot of unknown
has.
costs.
It has. That was the other idea, is that the lawyer had said that, not only to be transparent, but we might, eventually save some money in the process as well.
Right, okay, well, we've worked through it and solved it.
Okay.
Okay, do I have I had a motion yet? Okay, further questions of Ms. Davis or discussion on the motion?
I guess I had a question. It looks like there's, from the previous to this one, it's about a little over $100,000 difference.
Mhm.
But I guess, just the quality of some of the things that it works. I mean, how did?
No, I honestly feel like that's maybe companies not making their best effort to give us their best price. And once they saw the other pricing from the other companies, then they felt they needed to be a little more competitive.
Yes, I was gonna say, once the price became, posted, they knew where the ballpark they had to be in or beat if they wanted that. So I think it was to the company's advantages, also helped us out inadvertently.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the item number 8.3, awarding this contract to the winning bid, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Melissa, are you in on that?
I
Okay.
am in on that. I said aye.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I do have my hearing aids in, by the way. I appreciate, all those, anybody opposed? Okay, I declare the motion adopted unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you,
All right.
Wendy. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we're at item number 8.1, HVACs. We have here representing CMTA is Jeremy Smith, and we also have Ernie here from McKinley. I think Jeremy is the first. Did we get
John's here.
Through the HVAC.
Okay, John.
We all are.
Okay.
All right. Got 80-something slides on HVAC, but I know I'm gonna click them fast. But I'm gonna try to hit the high points.
How many?
80-something. Some of them are 1-second slides, though, so they're gonna go.
All right.
Transition slides,
Well, it's not a
like
lot
this
on
one.
each slide, so
What's that?
there's not a lot on some of each slide.
Yeah, there's not a lot. So, this is what I want to hit. I know there's been a lot of discussion around HVAC, since the bond passed in November. We've been around, hired in October, bond passed November. We've kind of been trying to get going ever since then. So when I talk about project goals as your consultant, these are the things that HVAC, this is the filter that we're going to look through. We want to provide an optimal learning environment. We want to maximize the economic benefit to Berkeley County Schools. And we want to do what we said we were going to do in the bond call. So to elaborate on that just a little bit, so we want good indoor air quality. That means it's a healthy environment in the classroom. We have good carbon dioxide levels. That became a big thing during COVID. I will talk some more all about the indoor air quality. We want the space comfortable, temperature, humidity. We want them to be able to hear. We want quiet HVAC. That's what we fixed 7 years ago in our first project, and we still want to do that today. The economic benefit, low energy costs, low maintenance costs. We want the equipment to last as long as possible. I don't think those are controversial. I think we can all say, yes, those are good things. So I started with the easy. So I want to talk through the scope. And I thought it might be beneficial. So I've been working, coming to Berkeley County for 9 years now, it's hard to believe. And, early on, you all found us at a conference, invited us here and said, how do we do zero energy schools? And I said, how much money do you have to spend? And you said, none. Okay, well, we got this thing called performance contracting where we can save energy and push those dollars into your buildings. And so one of the first things we did, we take a look at your buildings and they get a color. If it's green, that means if there's no equipment at end of life, things are pretty well okay at that school. Red, on the other end of the spectrum, means everything in that school is past end of life. You're on borrowed time, you're spending extra money, kids are uncomfortable, it's a bad situation. Yellow is somewhere in between. You might have some equipment at end of life, or you're getting ready to be red. So that's where you were in 2015. When we forecasted that out 5 years, that's where the problem hit. You were going to have 29 of your 35 were yellow and red. So yellow and red is bad. So we came along and we did an energy project, and that was the impact that we had. There were 5 reds that went green and 2 yellows that went green. So we took yellow and red off the board. We knocked out those 7 schools to where we were setting those up, for the next 20 years. So fast forward in time, the only major project that's been done for existing equipment has been Martinsburg High School. We only did a portion of it. We did about half, a little over half. And so you see the red creeping in over time. You start to see the value, even on this slide, of 5 extra years of life. We've talked about how long things last. If we could get by some 5 more years, that's valuable on this picture right here. So when you look at the condition of the HVAC in the district, green in 2016 was half. It was half green, you had very little red. Today, red's the predominant color. Red and yellow are 2/3 of the district. So we're creeping up on that condition again where it's very urgent. To your credit, recognize that. We put some money in the bond call. We're going to start attacking that problem because it's due. It's time. So forecasted 3 more years without anything additional. And the reason I put this on here is because Spring Mills High School feels pretty new, even to me, because it was new when I got here 9 years ago. Well, 3 more years, it's 15. That's the lifespan of a rooftop unit. We got to start replacing those rooftop units in a few years. It's a perpetual cycle you have to invest in. So the selected scope that we've done thus far, which is, I want to back up and revisit, that's the impact. I've kind of bolded those. It's a little hard to see, but only one of the 8 major renovations really resets the clock to green. We're doing a partial job in the rest of the school. So I wanted you to be fully aware, and this is the best picture that we can show over time of the green, yellow, red, and we're not, unfortunately, not really having, right now, a huge impact. So along with that, another goal that we talked about was indoor air quality. So you can read this slide right here, but this is the reality of the game with schools and indoor air quality. McKinley will agree with this here, but we want good indoor air quality in our schools, and it has benefits that just in the last 10 years we've really started to understand in terms of having higher cognitive function, better decision making. If we don't have outside air, we have higher absenteeism, we have more cases of flu, we have more cases of cold, and during COVID we could have more cases of COVID. And then, and I'll show you some studies to back up the incremental lower test scores. So this one is 2013. This was Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and Upstate Medical University, New York. I'll walk you through several of these very quickly, as quick as I can, without watering them down. But these three levels of carbon dioxide on this chart, the 600 and 1,000 are about what you would see in a properly conditioned, up to code classroom. 2,500 is what you have in a classroom, plus or minus, that really doesn't have outside air, where the kids are just breathing in the same air, it's just recirculating, going through a filter. So they broke decision making down into these different categories, and you can see some of them start to slide pretty bad. For example, the initiative is graded as dysfunctional with the no outside air. The basic strategy is graded as dysfunctional. Really the only one that didn't really, focused activity. They can still focus, but they may not imply basic strategy on what they're working on. So that's concerning, right? So walk you through a couple more. This one's 2021. We're in COVID, in the pandemic. Harvard School of Health is looking at indoor air quality. So higher CO2 levels means no fresh air or less fresh air. We had decreased performance in Stroop test metrics. The Stroop test is colors and words, and they'll say pick the circle yellow, and there'll be the word purple, but it'll be in yellow. So you have to think a little bit and circle purple, even though it's colored yellow. High carbon dioxide environment, kids don't do that as well. They don't add or subtract as fast. So this one is 2023, it's MIT. They studied 5,500 children, period of 5 school terms. They document indoor air quality. Poor indoor air quality during the school term preceding the test is associated with significantly lower test results. So it's statistically significant. It's not going from an A to an F, but it's a few points. And I'll show you that. It could be the difference between the passing and failing if you're right on the edge. This one is about offices. I can skip this one, but basically if you have good indoor air quality in your office, you have better response to a crisis or developing strategy using your brain. This one, air quality and children's performance in schools. If we have good indoor air quality, they're 12% faster, which maybe they get their test done on time rather than run out. My kid runs out of time sometimes, one of them. And then 2% less errors. So then that last sentence, changing the indoor air quality would increase daily attendance by 2.5%. And daily attendance figures into money ultimately for you all. It's in the funding equation. Here's one from California, 3.4% better attendance with good indoor air quality. And I think we're down to the last one. This one's from Germany, just to throw some other flavor in there. This one's looking at particulate matter, not having good filters. Like, you see I call them window shakers. Those units you just put in the window and drop it down. like those don't have good filtration. Like during COVID pandemic, that's not proper filtration. So if you have those, in the world of chess, your error, the probability of making error is 2.1% more, according to the study. It's a 26% rate in the error increase. So that's even one about filtration. Like I said, non-commercial systems, we don't have appropriate filtration. In summary, we need to have good indoor air quality in the schools for these reasons. So with the scope that we're at right now, we're only addressing indoor air quality in 4 of the 8. I feel like it's my job to tell you we're only addressing it in 4 of the 8. And maybe let's back up and see if we can get it 8 of 8, so we don't have to worry about all this stuff. So just to restate on the scope here, I don't think we're hitting number 1. Number 2, I'm not sure we're hitting. I'm really not even sure we're quite hitting number 3 because we said we were going to do HVAC renovations. Part of the issue a little bit is the budget. So I want to talk about that. So you had a CEFP plan, which I think provided some of the basis for which you did the bond call. And so it had $13 million in it for HVAC renovations, that top right number. And we looked at it in July of last year and said, I think that number is more like $115 million, which you probably need. That's a staggering number, I know. Additionally, just read those first 2 sentences. I won't read them to you, but they're important. So they were budgeted at 28 to 32, and we recommended 80 to 150. And that 80 to 150, that we do projects across the country. We're one of the biggest firms in the country that do what we do. That's our database plus all the public data we can go get. And it's 80 to 150. 80 to 150 is a big range, but we just need to look at the scope and figure out where we can be. So in July, we recommended on the left 80 to 150. The bond call or the bond budget, which it says August, but this is what we published also in November, or we got in November, was approved in November, was at $26 a square foot, and right now we're spending $15 a square foot. In my mind, my advice to you would be to at least spend $26 a square foot to try to affect the green, yellow, red, bite off what you can, to try to get good indoor air quality in the schools. So I have a request for you all. We can revisit this because we've got 2 requests tonight. But one is to allow CMTA and McKinley to work together in a smaller group, debating split systems and rooftop units and pumps with you all in a setting like this probably doesn't make the most sense. But let us know who the rep is and allow McKinley and CMTA to work together to finalize that scope. My advice, and we'll do more work, is to spend at least the 15. And if we're on the edge of doing a lot of good with $2 more million, if some of the other stuff comes in under budget, slide it over. But we won't know until you kind of appoint us to look at it and see what we have to spend. So that's one request. We can come back to that. And then we have, the execution. So this is where we're going to talk about how are we going to do it. Are we going to do traditional design, bid, build, or are we going to do performance contracting, which is what we did, CMTA did in 2016 and 2018. So I want to talk first cost, life cycle cost, and we'll summarize the differences in the 2. I want to do, first of all, first cost case study. This is Kanawha County Schools passed a huge bond as well. They budgeted $96.7 million to do 12 HVAC renovations and 10 roofs. They budgeted based on their experience. They had never done a performance contract like this. They budgeted those as if they were capital projects. Along the way, they said, we think the performance contract process has a lot of advantages. Let's go do it that way. Turned it over to us. We delivered that scope for $89.9 million. So we came in under budget, below what they had. So our final, so we were 7 million under there. Then we had more money to spend. So they said, go add the stuff in green on the right side. 5 schools of windows, life safety in 3 schools, additional HVAC, additional deferred maintenance. So I added a bunch more stuff. We still only spent 93.8 million. So they got more scope. We then, on the right side, did even more. We did another roof. We did some electric. We did a new pool HVAC system. And we're finally up to what they had budgeted through the capital construction process. So, as usual, our schools perform very well. This is the energy usage per square foot. You all have seen these charts before. Those are all Kanawha County schools, and the ones we did are in green. The ones in gray were done the traditional way. So I want to back up now, and there's an idea that performance contracting costs more than traditional. These are all the CMTA major HVAC renovations that in Kanawha County versus what they had been doing in the orange. So the CMTA Kanawha County projects are in blue, the Kanawha County traditional are in orange. And these are all in Kanawha County. This is the same contracting community, same bidders bidding this stuff. Our performance contracts are coming in less. This one, I got ahead of myself. This one is Kanawha County plus other projects. We just grabbed everything we could in the last couple of years and threw them on a graph. And you can see with a little bit of overlap, the performance contract HVAC renovations are cheaper. And they are top to bottom renovations. So the green line I put on here is what your budget is, and that kind of puts it in perspective too. That we're a little thin, and we need to try to spread that as far as we can. That's that $26 a square foot. That's that line. So in the traditional model, I want to explain to you a little bit about where our cost efficiency comes from. You have the general contractor on the left under contract with Berkeley County Schools. The general contractor gets an electrical contractor, gets a mechanical contractor. Those 2 contractors go out and buy equipment and might even have some subs, like the controls sub might work for the mechanical. So you get a markup to the mechanical, a markup to the GC. In our model, the energy services company, that's CMTA in the middle, I buy all the light fixtures, ship to the site, my construction manager receives them. We bring the electrician over that we've hired, he installs the lights that we purchased. We're not doing solar, but that's the same way we do solar panels. That's the same way we do HVAC equipment. We buy all of that. So we're providing an extra service there, but it is eliminating markup on whatever those major material packages are running on the project, 30-40% of the project. We're eliminating a markup level on that. That's part of our cost efficiency. By the way, it's open book pricing. SBA approved selection process. So CMTA was originally selected with SBA involved. The competitive bidding happened when we won. It also happens when we bid to subcontractors, and that's all done in collaboration with your rep, whoever you appoint, we review the bids with. So lower first cost. To summarize, we direct purchase materials. We have no subs to a sub. We are the general contractor and construction manager. So there's kind of an idea that we're like this extra thing. We're not the extra thing. We take the place of the general contractor. We do some additional services on the energy side. I'll show you that in a second, but again, they pay for themselves. Faster construction schedules. The 7 schools we did, all done in 8 weeks, boom, done, knocked out, don't have to worry about them. That's very, very hard in the traditional world where the low bid general is working with the mechanical that happened to bid him the lowest and the electrician that happened to bid the lowest. And they don't work for me or McKinley. We try to beat on them, maybe that's a bad word. We try to enforce that they deliver a good project. Ultimately, we have no contract with them. Our contract is with you, your contract is with the contractor. So we try to influence their quality, but we can't renovate a school over the summer in that way. Typically it take a year. Ohio County, we did work that district together. We had some traditional that went a year plus, and we had some performance contracts that were done in the summer. So my firm has given up trying to do traditional projects in and out over summer. It just doesn't happen anymore. So with that, there's less manpower. These subs know they're going to get in and get out. So let's talk about, that's the first cost section. So let's talk about life cycle cost. I think there's been the idea expressed that we just need energy efficient equipment. We don't need CMTA. So you've seen this before. This is the units of energy per square foot with the last 4 major construction projects you did before CMTA arrived. You did North Middle, Spring Mills High School, Mountain Ridge Middle, Spring Mills Primary. Units of energy per square foot. They're long bars. That's bad news. We came in and renovated schools, and ours are in the green. But the point here is about the equipment. So these 4 schools, we're going to deep dive real quick on those. So Spring Mills Primary, before we arrived, this is how we track the energy performance of the schools. This is the cumulative kilowatt hours over the course of a year. So before we arrived, on average, Spring Mills Primary, Pat knows the history well, was supposed to be the greenest school in the state. It's got geothermal. It's got a lot of good things. It's here. That's where you're running without our help. That same equipment with our help was running 788. So we reduced it 30%. Spring Mills High, we cut it more than half. Mountain Ridge Middle and Martinsburg North Middle, otherwise known as just North Middle. So those are the reductions. So that's the same equipment. We did not replace equipment in our project. We optimized what you had. We controlled it better. We scheduled it better. We watched the utility bill every month. If there's a discrepancy, we go back in, we address it. And Spring Mills High needed a lot of work. I'll talk some more on that one. But that same equipment before we arrived and then after, we saved you $401,000 just on those 4 schools per year. So does energy efficient equipment save energy? Yes and no. It can. But again, without CMTA, monitoring, watching, optimizing, you were red, and then with our help, you were blue. So it's kind of like anything. If you effort and focus gives results. And essentially nobody was in charge of how they were running. It was just whatever it was, the bill came in and you paid it. And that's what most school districts do. This is a little nerdy, as if these all aren't a little nerdy, but this one is the outside air unit on a school, 74 writable values. So when I open up the source code for that, it's 12 pages, there's 74 values I can put, and I can change throughout the year to make that one unit behave how it should. The standard practice on that is to turn it on and walk away. It runs good. It's Berkeley County's now. Whereas we go in and actually, there's about 10 really important ones that we modify throughout the year to optimize that unit. And this is not limited to Berkeley County. We often go into schools that were just built, have energy efficient equipment, and put them in our program. And here's a sample set. We've got some Ohio County schools. Mineral County is in there. Loudoun County, Virginia next door. So, I mean, how much money are we talking about? Should you be most concerned about first cost, energy and maintenance costs, or our fee? We'll talk about that. This is a HVAC and lighting renovation, hypothetical 50,000 square foot school. That's the first cost. That's the construction cost. There's the fees. That's where you end up with the energy and maintenance cost in 20 years. If I can do it a little bit better, 48 EUI to 35 EUI approved, I can do that. CMT has proved we can do that. You know, I save money on the back end. But here's what I want you to see. So the first, construction cost, professional services, energy and maintenance. So it's my job, I talked about first cost, that's that construction cost bar. I talked about life cycle cost, that's that energy and maintenance. Those are the vast majority of the cost of your buildings. The professional services, any way you slice it, are usually less than 10% of the total cost of ownership of the building. So, we don't cost more. I told you, we showed you that we don't, the data shows we don't cost more, but let's say somebody comes in and they cost more. And their fees are 30% higher in the orange, but they produce that same trajectory with the energy because they did more stuff. They charged you more, but they did more stuff. 30% higher fees, we still save money if we can get that 13 EUI point difference. So, to talk about traditional versus performance contract. This is a sample breakdown of a project. All the green is kind of like subcontractors, suppliers, pipe, sheet metal. That's that construction cost on that chart. That's the bottom. Then this stuff in blue is standard services you get on any project. Those are by CMTA, McKinley. Those are like design, commissioning. You get all of those. Then with the Guaranteed Energy Savings Contract, you get the stuff in yellow or orange. Those are the services that drive the energy down. Those are the services that took those 4 schools and saved $400,000 a year. Those are the things that we do. I'm happy to elaborate on any of those, but I'm trying to go fast. So how do we do the lower life cycle cost? We commission the system, watching the utility bills. We optimize the best-in-class performance. I've presented before. I've talked about all the awards we get nationally. It's because this is what we do. We're very good at this, and that's why you asked us to come here, back in 2014. Scheduling and set points are done daily by someone in my office. 15 years of monthly verification. You can't take the eye off the prize. Intensity and focus. I asked Dave Spurrier in my office, you all don't know that name, walking in the door. I know they set the air, but when I walk in the meeting, I always ask, did you set the air? And he sent me a screenshot within like a minute of the unit. He said, the thermostat says 72, the room's currently 73, you should be good. Like, they're there. They're watching it every day, watching the bills every month. If there's ever any abnormalities, we go in and explain the energy spikes, fix the energy spikes. So that is how we drive the value. So in summary, last 2 slides. Why might you do a guaranteed energy savings contract? You're really trying to transfer risk for the energy performance to someone else. When I showed you those charts, we're guaranteeing a reduction. There is no risk of going back up to the red, because if you do, I would have to pay you. I would have to write a check to make you whole. Ongoing operational issues. We can't tolerate those if we're supposed to have good energy performance. Good example, I walked into Spring Mills High School. It was, 3-4 years after construction or having issues. We went into action mode. We flew in the factory rep. I sent multiple technicians. I still have the Excel spreadsheet on my desktop. It was a brand new school, but none of it was working right. And it was a lemon. Units were tripping in the middle of the day. You'd have electrical gear trips. You may or may not remember those, where all the lights in the school would go off. The original architecture and engineering firm were gone, and you're like, oh, what do we do? So the benefit of a 15-year contract is you would just call Jeremy and say, fix it. And that's what we did. That wasn't our issue, but that we jumped in and did that. And that's just one of the services that we bring. You get partnership, like I said, the budget studies, anytime, any cost. Bond cost preparation, we did the math. We have over 410 hours expended checking these schools, walking them, looking at all the systems. Haven't sent a bill, but that's we're under contract to do these things. The school staff changes, but CMTA does not. We just had another transition. Eventually, I'll meet 4th facilities director, and we'll give them an orientation, explain the program. We'll show them where all the drawings are. We'll show them the inventory of units, and we'll orient them, train them, help them. And you can call us with any building issue at any time. It's fast. We talked about that. You definitely want to get in and out with these. We're on site all day, every day, versus in the traditional method, the architect and engineer ultimately try to enforce quality, but we're not ultimately responsible for it. So let me say it again. We try to enforce it, but we're not responsible for it. In a performance contract, I'm responsible for it. So if something gets covered up in a wall and it costs $30,000 to fix later, that's on me. And so my person's on site every day in a performance contract versus just a meeting every couple weeks. The ongoing optimization and monitoring, we're in the program now. We've produced over $2 million in savings beyond guaranteed levels to date. You've been proven to be the best in the state. I've showed you the examples of leadership, multiple industry awards. We had a fun thing where the Department of Energy came and we all had certificates. Did that, I believe, at Pekin Elementary School. Competitive bidding, you don't give that up just because you work with us. That still happens. It's easier to standardize equipment across the district. The one contract for all makes a lot of sense sometimes. Sometimes like Spring Mills High School, nobody knew where to call the controls guy, the HVAC guy, the general contractor, the engineer. Four parties, and they're all like, call such and such. Whereas in this method, it's one phone call. There's no change orders. That goes without saying. That's nice. We never come ask for extra money. If we have issues, they come out of our profit. Open book pricing. And then, so my other ask for you, and I went quick, I'm sure there's lots of questions, but would be to authorize us to go ahead and execute an additional phase of performance contracting for the major HVAC projects. Major HVAC projects to be defined by that first group that you participate in as well.
Question. Melissa, Ms. Power, do you have I know you have a question. Would you like to ask it now?
I actually got that one question I had answered, so in all the presentation, I need to think at the moment.
Okay.
Throw a lot of information at us.
Yes, ma'am. Members of the board, we'll come back to you, Ms. Power, if you have another question you think of. Members of the board.
What schools would you suggest if we were, where would you start first?
Well, I'd want to figure out the smartest way to spend what you said you were going to spend, which is that 15.8 on the listed schools, which is 8 plus Inwood. So that's where I would start. And I think at some schools it would be more than what we're doing now. Obviously, there's $6 more million there. I want to make sure the indoor air quality is good, probably at a bare minimum, and then get into the efficiency as much as we can. We're not going to be able to do, at $15 or $20 a square foot. We're not going to be able to do geothermal. We're going to have to, maybe one will fit, but we're going to have to be very smart and make it go as far as we can, get the most green, get the best indoor.
What school would you suggest geothermal?
Tomahawk makes some good sense. Some of them fall off because of the space for the well field and cost. You also have space to put the units inside. Right now, Tomahawk is making the most sense.
Questions by members of the board? Are you overwhelmed? Okay.
Even though I've heard this
Yeah.
presentation many times, it's still a lot to take in.
In general, you're sitting there making projections, but on the energy costs, are you making those projections on the current day energy costs? Are you seeing, or the reality of the price of energy going up as?
Yeah. The reason that line is sloped is because the energy is going up. The reason there's a slight curve to it. So this is, I can't remember, we have 2.5% or 3%. That's usually what we build in to be pretty conservative. If I didn't have that, those would just be perfectly straight lines rather than just a slight curve to them.
What was that percentage?
2.5% to 3%.
You're,
And you have far exceeded that. You've been in double digits.
right, that's what I was going to say. I had a newspaper clipping from the Charleston Gazette. And do you follow individual states, or, because I was looking at, West Virginia is trying to subsidize the coal industry. I mean, I don't think people realize it up in this part, but I was looking at a rate increase that was requested by Appalachian, and I've been on the road all day today, and I didn't get a chance to prepare for this, but I do have a newspaper clipping, and the rate increase that was being asked at the PSC was higher than what you're saying there. And here we go. No, that's not it. Okay, let me ask another question. Like at Spring Mills High, they had everything out there, but you just went out and it sounds like you just tuned things up.
Right.
So it's not like you're putting something in, you're just making it work more efficiently.
That's correct. Spring Mills High School units are way too big in most cases. And they were just flushing too much air through the space, overcooling, overheating, trying to simplify as much as they can. To answer your question, yes. We just tuned it, and we continue to monitor it. If it ever starts to deviate from where we're at, we go back in and we tune it again.
And the other thing that you mentioned, I heard today, is in the traditional way, you have all these different people working. And they're not all rowing the oars in sync with each other. And you get into finger pointing. Whereas with the performance contract, you have the problem as the overseer to make sure there's synchronization and everything. What about the selection of those subs thing? I remember somewhere where I think I was told that you all let us help have input into selection of subs as long as they perform to your standards.
That's correct. Yeah, we bring the bids back to you. We select subs together.
So if we can find somebody in the local community who's contributing to our tax base, your process allows more local selection than maybe this going to, well, like we were talking about the camera thing, we had somebody in down around Charleston who won that first bid. But
It would allow you to be more intentional about any local participation bills.
okay.
On the low bid side, most of the time you have to take the low bid. You have to have it, or else it gets legal, and it's time and trouble and money. You can be, we sit down and we look at the subcontractor list together and make those decisions.
Go ahead.
I also remember in the past where once in a while there was nobody at a site working because they just couldn't get there. And, Don Zepp would come in and just fuming, because, there's just no progress being made. So that eliminates anything of that nature, correct? Unless
Yeah,
they get a product.
it would fall on me if that happened. Don Zepp was not involved, even though he was still around, he was not involved with ours because the district
Yeah.
found they didn't need him to be. I forgot, I brought it up so I wouldn't forget it. I'll give you this packet, but I've got a letter of recommendation for Don Mitchell, who was the facilities director, 2 facilities directors ago, worked for Berkeley County Schools for 29 years, over 50 construction projects. You all were going fast and hard for many years. CMTA is the best engineering company we have dealt with, and also provided by a wide margin the smoothest and fastest construction we've ever experienced. And he goes through and lists 4 bullet points. Also, in the last 2 weeks, we got a letter of recommendation from Loudoun County Schools, next door in Virginia. We're doing $104 million of work over 8 phases. They're a leader in their state. They could work with anybody in the country. They choose to work with us and feed us project after project because of what you read about here. We got one from North Carolina. We got one from Kentucky just in the last 2 weeks. So I copied those. We've got over 60 in the file, but I've copied these. Don Mitchell is on the bottom. He's not least important, but I put him on.
I copied those,
You're not
Mr.
telling me
Murphy
to put him
had
on
asked
the
me to
bottom.
copy those, and I passed them out pretty
Okay.
thoroughly.
All right. Do you have Don's?
I don't have,
No.
well, Pat didn't, I don't know if Pat had Don's on. Thank you.
I think I got it this morning.
I might have, but I didn't. You sent it to me, I didn't.
Now technically, as I recall when we were talking about the contract with McKinley, McKinley is the supervisor in this whole process with you. I mean, if there's a question, they make the call, right?
We're gonna have traditional projects.
No, no, I'm talking about, well, okay, let's talk about traditional.
Yeah, so McKinley, CMTA works for McKinley on those. They're your point of contact on those. They'd like to be the point of contact to manage all budget funds, and that's kind of one, and I believe that's a good idea. We plug in on the performance contracts. I'll be your point of contact, CMTA would, on the HVAC projects.
Okay.
The rest of it is directly to McKinley, and our engineers work for McKinley on those projects.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes? Is that your understanding, Mr.?
Yes. We understand it, and, you know, what we've said in our conversations with Ron and even some of you, it was that there's a process of getting to where we're a team, and that team must decide what's best for Berkeley County Schools, not what's best for McKinley or CMTA. What's best for Berkeley County Schools. So if there's an energy project that makes sense, then we're gonna raise our hand. If it doesn't make sense, then we're gonna say we think it should go just traditional. But in this case, you know, he's our HVAC consultant. He'll be designing it on that side. If it's an energy project, then he'll make it like he explained there. So that was our, you know, what we discussed.
Right. I remember hearing some, I just wanted to make sure the board heard it as well. You made a point during the presentation that you said, during the traditional process, I've had a long day, haven't we, Ron?
Yeah.
And I'm sure the staff is.
Sure they all have.
Yeah. But during that traditional approach, when you have this fragmentation of different subcontractors, then once we are handed the key, then we have to go to the lawyers to work out responsibility for shortfalls. I mean, you
Not
never
necessarily.
mentioned that, you never mentioned it, but during the traditional way, if there's a question of what one did or the other did, who has, you know, and the finger point starts, then how do you resolve that if you don't go through lawyers?
First of all, you can do a traditional project and have a great result. It will take longer for a renovation. But
You need a
can-
good architect.
You need a good architect.
Okay.
So that's why you have us in place on that side to try to make that happen.
Right.
I greatly increase my likelihood if I'm able to control it and do it through a performance contract, of everything being smooth and everybody being happy. You know, how issues get resolved after construction, they'll back me up on it. It's all over the board. And depending on the architect or engineer firm and the contractors involved, it can be the owner left holding the bag and they just gotta pay to fix something that's 3 and 4 years old that they shouldn't have to pay for. You see that all the time. We will be your advocate, we will push, we will call, we will scratch, we will claw, we'll get everything you deserve between your contract, between your contractors and you. There's a limit to that. We can't drive them here and make them fix stuff. Yeah.
Okay. I know some of you have other questions, go ahead.
I was on the board when you guys did the initial performance contract, and then was it 2015? What, like, I don't know, if you're asking what other schools you were thinking geothermal-wise, and that kind of question, is money outside the bond of, I forget what the deal was, the initial of how we financed it to begin with.
Right.
Is that a possibility out of the scope of the bond as well for additional geothermal?
There, yes.
So just grants and.
Well, even there's not as much meat left on the bone to wring out additional energy savings, but there's a little bit. We could make Tomahawk a zero energy school. There's a case for those solar panels paying for themselves in 15 years, cash flow neutral, budget neutral, and we go out and do a little deal outside of the bond call. So that is an option. We might be able to grab an additional geothermal, but it's not going to fund. It funded back then 22 million, and then they got SBA funding for an additional 6. So the days of doing 26, and then we did a second phase at Martinsburg, I want to say for 5 million. So we've done 22 and 5, 27 million paid from savings. That juice is pretty well squeezed. There might be a little bit out there left, but not a whole lot.
Mr. Ray?
No, not yet.
I don't know. Do you want to say anything, Ernie? Because, obviously, we got a few, any comments, anything that you heard?
I'm sorry.
Oh, just, do you have any comments of what you heard from Jenny's presentation?
No, like I said, this is really a unique situation. Typically, I guess typically we'd be competitors. He would be trying to sell the energy service and we would be trying to sell traditional. But, by virtue of us working on other projects and teaming, we're committed to doing what's best for Berkeley County. And it doesn't always mean it's the best for my firm, and it probably won't, it doesn't mean it's gonna be the best for CMTA, it's the best for Berkeley County. That's what you hired us to do. If you choose to go this route, you can be assured that we're still committed to that.
Okay. You're asking for the request there. Define what you mean as a smaller group.
Smaller than this group. So give us 1 to 2 people, whoever you want to appoint, to talk through scope and budgets with us. We will reach a recommendation in that small group and bring it back here.
Okay. I've just been through a training, and usually when you appoint personnel, he does it, correct?
He's talking about a member of the board.
Oh,
Yeah.
Someone with authority, whoever you delegate the authority to. I don't care who picks it.
yeah, I do respect the superintendent's position here and responsibility for appointing personnel. Board will appoint one, and you will.
What he's saying is, we've brought some things, and it's, we're just, I feel like we're horse jockeying back and forth, trying to figure out what,
Yeah.
trying to tell you what you want to hear and figure out what the questions are. So put somebody in this group
Yeah.
to ask those questions so that when we bring something to you, it's going down the right path, is what I believe he's asking.
Okay, I know 3 of the board members here have daytime commitments, and this is a daytime operation that you all are asking for the important. With your all's agreement, would you be all right with Ms. Long being that person from the board? Ms. Power, would you be okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe she said what we wanted her to say.
Pardon me?
I believe she said what we wanted her to say.
Oh, that ain't.
Good luck.
You know that's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. Okay. I'm going to appoint Ms. Long to be one of the 2 people, and I'm going to ask Mr. Stevens to have probably Ms. Davis, I guess. Is she still here?
Well, it will be Ms. Davis until we get our,
I want to, I'd like to.
and she'll probably stay with it just for consistency.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
are we with that one?
It's been posted, it's been advertised, we can talk about that.
Okay, so we'll appoint Ms. Davis and Ms. Long to be in the small group that you've asked. All right, I need a motion to, for the two items there, authorize CMTA and McKinley to work in a small group with Berkeley County rep to finalize scope and budgets, and also authorize CMTA to execute additional phase of performance contracting for major HVACs. Could you explain your second request?
Yeah, just so we know what path we're going down on these HVAC renovations. It'll allow us to move forward, eliminate some uncertainty, and streamline things moving forward if I know I'm in charge of those. So the major HVAC projects you listed, 9 schools in the Bonnet Call. I think Inwood has fallen off. But we have 8 schools listed. It may not be 8 schools in the performance contract. In the previous path we're going down is 4, but again, I want to talk about the scope. I want to make sure you do the best thing. If we put more money into it and expand the scope on a couple schools, maybe it's 5 schools, maybe it's 6 schools, but us and McKinley and your rep will work through that. So whichever ones are major HVAC projects, then we would do through the performance contract.
Okay, now, I want to clarify here. Number one, I understand, and we're ready to do that. Well, number two, we're not giving you the power to, we're not signing a blank check now, and you fill in the number later.
Yeah, the scope and the contract, everything will come back to board level for approval.
Okay.
You're not giving me a contract, number 2.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not doing something on the front end that you all come back and say, well, you all already voted on that, and then we didn't show due diligence in making sure that was what we wanted to see happen.
With number 2, I set a lot of things in motion. Those 400 man hours become 2,000, 3,000 pretty quick. So I would just want your, and we don't bill. For design projects, we bill as we spend hours. For these, we don't get paid until there's a contract.
Right, so
way
you
down the
got to
road.
sell it to us.
Yes, so I would want some commitment from you all that if we bring a $15 million project that makes sense, that hits indoor air quality, and hits the green, yellow, red, and you say, yes, we would like to execute that contract. If you think that's not the case, then you don't need to do it.
All right. Are you all ready to vote? Okay, we'll vote on them both as one package. Ms. Power, do you have any comments or questions before we make a motion here?
No.
Okay. Who will make the motion for items 1 and 2 up there? Make sure that our coordinator there, this Manuel, gets a copy of what you have here.
Yep.
Okay, who will make the motion? It's requested there.
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Power has moved. Second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been moved and second. Discussion on the motion. Any questions? Clarification? All those in favor of the motion by Ms. Power and seconded by Mr. Martin signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Declare the motion unanimously adopted. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Ready to get to work. Thank you.
Okay, I want to request, without a motion, that our architect review the turf issues. We had talked about that. Have you forwarded him that information? I have it here if you don't.
Other than a phone call with him, no.
Okay, Ernie, I have whatever we got the other night for you to review. I want you to realize there's one other bidder that hasn't submitted his work, and when's that due? Friday of this week? Okay, you talk with Mr. Stevens about that, but if you're gonna leave now, just come up and grab all this. Yeah, please. Here you go. And you and Mr. Stevens can talk about it. Just review it for us.
Okay.
Okay?
Let me just take
Okay.
this and get back to you on it. Hey, I'm meeting with John tomorrow morning. We can talk about it. Okay. Okay.
Okay, we're back on the agenda, and I misplaced all my papers. Here's, we're on 8.2. I'm sorry. Okay, let's, Ms. McKeon, can we take a 1 minute break?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're now at item number 8.2, and we're going to move along. Ms. McKeon.
President Murphy, members of the board, Superintendent Stevens, come before you tonight on action item 8.2, nursing service bids. The explanation is that we currently have 3 vacated, unfilled school nurse positions posted on Berkeley County Schools website. There is 1 vacated and unfilled school nurse position posted on EPIC's website. Our job is to ensure nursing coverage for our students in the event we are unable to hire these or future unfilled school nurse positions through BCS or EPIC. We are requesting that we utilize staffing agencies to fill the school nurse positions. We sent out bids and we had 11 vendors. The 6 lowest bids are SNF Out had the lowest bid at $58 an hour, would equal $73,080 per school year for 1 school nurse position. The second lowest bid was from American Medical Staffing, AMS, at $60 per hour, equivalent to $75,600 school year, 1 position. The third lowest bid was Wise Medical Staffing at $60.25 an hour, equivalent to $75,918 per school year, 1 position. The fourth lowest bid was from EGA Associates at $62 per hour, equivalent to $78,120 school year, 1 position. And finally, the 5th lowest bid was tied. Maxim came in at $68 per hour. Healthcare Staffing Professionals also at $68 an hour, both equivalent to $85,680 per school year per school nurse position. And that's for the whole school year. That was calculated at 180 days. In the event that the lowest bidding agency, SNF Out, cannot staff or open school nurse positions, we request the board to approve the agency who came in second, AMS. The third, Wise Medical Staffing. The fourth, EGA Associates. And finally, the 5th, Maxim or Healthcare Staffing Professionals to fill any open positions. In addition, we request a 1-year contract with the option to renew each contract on a yearly basis for up to 3 years. This provides continuity of care for our students. Presently, we have the 4 open positions are at Pikeside Learning Center, Musselman High School, Eagle School Intermediate, and Spring Mills Middle. And I did calculate the yearly total amount for all 4 positions for you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mrs. McKeon?
I just have 2 quick questions. Are these RNs or LPNs? Or we don't
RN.
know?
Yes, ma'am.
They're
The positions that we were requesting are for registered nurses.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And, well, I know the posted positions are, but these.
Yes, ma'am, these are RN, yes.
Okay.
These are two.
And are these companies fairly local? Where are they coming from?
Different locations. The one that we used this past year was AMS, and they're actually located, the company,
I remember them.
Hunt Valley, Maryland.
Yeah. But
the-
they're in the ballpark around here somewhere.
Yes, ma'am.
Further questions by members of the board of Mrs. McCann?
Is it possible to scratch the first bid if we don't feel comfortable with the company?
Is that a question for me, or?
Yeah, proceed.
Do you know that they're not?
I mean, look, like, their website, there's no information at all of who owns it. It's literally a one-page, like a one-page website. There's no information. It's like 3 paragraphs.
Okay, but let me clarify. You put out a request for bids,
Yes, sir.
and you had a form that they had to fill out and and you reviewed all those. I think you said you had a dozen or so bids. So they are being, I understand that there's nothing on the website about them, but they did have to respond to the request for bid, and they were all measured by the same measuring stick. Am I correct, Mr. Stevens or Mr.?
You are.
Okay, so what
We,
they're.
it was not listed that we would go through their site. They had to come and present their information, yeah.
Oh, so they did present it.
Well, they presented their information. I don't know if they stood in,
Yeah, they did not present anything, but we had to make sure that they completed the appropriate contracts for the state guidelines and for our county.
Yeah, and I'm not going, I just wondered if we know of any other districts that have used this company.
I do not have that information.
Okay, I was just curious.
if there's something that comes up that would disqualify them, we would not be forced to use them.
Okay.
So if there is something as a result of what Mr. Martin has seen tonight, or any other reason for their,
Then we go to AMS.
then we would get, that's what she's asking
Yes,
for.
exactly.
And just for clarification, in the past, we've had issues, with these services not being able to provide multiple
Yeah.
areas of coverage, so we've had to use multiple agencies to be able to do that. So that we've become accustomed to coming before the board and asking for, here's the first one that we would go to. If they're unable to fulfill all of it, any or all of it, we would go to the second and the third, until all of these positions are able to be filled.
Well, we might have to use all of them.
We have in the past.
Yeah.
Because at different times during the year, some of them, for instance, if we ask in August, there may be a number of other districts that have
The same.
had the same thing going on, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, Mr. Martin did raise a good question, though, that I just picked up on, and that is, do you monitor the performance of the nurses?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there will be oversight of these nurses by a trained person such as yourself.
Yes.
And will there be, and I heard you use the word consistency, will the same person be at the same school on a consistent basis?
That is our goal for continuity of care. That
Okay.
we would like to, that is our goal. We're trying our best for continuity of care, and that helps provide a pattern and knowledge of each student, depending on their need.
Yeah, you raised a good point, that's picked up on that. Any other questions by members of the board of Mrs. McKeon or Mr. Stevens? Ms. Paller, I'm sorry, I forgot to recognize you. Do you have a question?
I heard Mr. Martin's concerns, and I'm wondering, is there a way that we can get references from other places that maybe have used nurses from that first agency?
We could reach out.
Were they required?
They were
References
not
were
required
okay.
to list references.
Okay, we,
And again, what we do is, once we have your approval, then we'll go through each company, work on, make sure that we establish, we have a MOU, we work with legal and make sure that everything is in line. There has been time in the past where they did not complete every required document, and so they had to be tossed out.
And the nurses that come in from these agencies have to have the appropriate credentials, or it doesn't matter whether the agency has a webpage or not. I mean, they have to provide the proper credentials to work with students.
I was just pointing out, there's no like reviews on Google,
Got it.
like AMS.
Totally
that's
understand.
Over 100. I'm just, for our students, I'd rather the first professional care for them to be reputable.
Same with Glassdoor. Yeah, same with Glassdoor. They don't have anything either.
But that's the first thing, you mentioned credentials and, making sure. And as we receive applicants, that we've been wonderful with Indeed, and you mentioned the Glassdoor. That's the first thing that I do is I get on and verify their license, and I start, looking at, any knowledge thereof. Yeah.
okay.
Perfect.
I think the motion we are looking for is on page 2 above open positions. We're going to award it as is written there. Everybody see what I'm talking about? In the event that the lowest bidding agency, S&F.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Stevens, did we have your recommendations for that motion?
Yes.
Okay, I need a motion.
I motion that we accept the recommendation for the proposed agencies in the order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how it works out.
With one-year
For
contracts
the
up.
contract year of 2023, 2024.
Well, it's a one-year
One-year
contract
contract.
up to 3 renewals.
Yeah.
Okay?
Correct.
Okay, second to the motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Long, seconded by Mr. Ray. Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes, I'm sorry, Ms. Power, are you still there?
She said yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just said aye, sorry.
Okay, I know. All those in favor of the motion, we've already voted. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it to declare the motion adopted. Thank you, Ms. McKee.
Thank you.
All right, we've already handled 8.3. And now we're down to a consulting firm and Ms. Powell, I'm sorry, and Ms. Burkhart.
Good evening, Superintendent Stevens and members of the board. I'm here this evening to share some information about how leadership coaching can help improve student achievement in our district. I'm going to provide a brief overview, and then Dr. Chris Price from ICLE will be providing a plan, and then Betty Ann Powell, our Director of Federal Programs, will provide information on the financial piece of that. So here are a few reasons why such a partnership would really benefit and be valuable for our county, and most important for our students. The consulting firm offers expertise and experience. They specialize in leadership coaching, which brings extensive knowledge, expertise in educational leadership and school improvement. This firm has worked with many schools, and they have a diverse responsibility and have dealt with diverse challenges to help schools and school districts define effective strategies to address them. Objectivity and a fresh perspective. External consultants provide an objective viewpoint. They can give us a fresh perspective on school culture, leadership practices, overall educational environment, and the instructional practices that they see based on the information when they do their walkthroughs. It also can help identify some blind spots that we may not see, the challenges and the opportunities that might be evident within the school system that we aren't able to identify. It also provides that experience for our school leadership. It's a customized approach. The firms help tailor their coaching programs to the specific needs and goals of each school and each principal. As you know, when we look at our schools, they're all very different. They all have very different cultures. And this firm would come in and conduct assessments, gather needs and goals of the schools, and also work with the school principals, looking at leadership practices, really focusing on student achievement data, and designing a customized coaching plan for each school within the district. This would also involve including the Department of Teaching and Learning, and we would also align with their practices. They would also provide professional development and skill enhancement. Leadership coaching can enhance the skills and capabilities of our principals, help them develop effective leadership practices, communication skills, decision-making skills, and problem-solving techniques. They help strengthen the capacity and the leadership skills of our principals, and they can positively impact the overall school culture, but most importantly, again, student achievement. Also, accountability and support, and this one is actually my favorite. They can provide ongoing support and accountability to principals as we work towards implementing changes and achieving goals. As you know, change is not easy within a system, and this is a very comprehensive look at the challenges that we face in the county. They are aware of those challenges. We have spoken to them about some of those challenges, and they will also help us to navigate the change. So at this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Chris Price from ICLE.
I really could just say ditto to everything she just said. She just pretty much laid out everything that we're going to be doing. I got you. So again, Chris Price with ICLE, and thank you, Mr. Board President and board members. Superintendent, thank y'all for having me this evening. Glad to be here in Berkeley, West Virginia. Traveling is not always easy these days, so coming in from Dulles today and lots of delays, but I'm here and I'm glad to be here. So we have worked with the district office here for a few times, met over the course of months, talking about a potential partnership. And we partner with a lot of districts in West Virginia, but we also partner with districts across the country as well as internationally. We are in CNMI, we're in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and there's some other districts that we work with that we're starting new partnerships with as well internationally. But I'm near and dear to my heart is West Virginia. I've got a lot of districts that we work with here and just love the people here, love coming to West Virginia. And I've learned, you know, you come, like I flew into Dulles to go here, but I'll fly into Pittsburgh to go to Charleston, or not to Charleston, but to Marion, or then I'll fly into Charleston to go down to Cavill and things like that. So we really do love the time that's spent in West Virginia. Talking about the scope of work. So we know there's challenges in leadership and education, and that's kind of our forte. That's what we do. So knowing that, we're proposing kind of a 3-year systems approach to this, because this, all the research says that you need at least 3 years to show change. So with that process, we're going to talk about instructional practice assessments, and that's what we call IPAs. That'll be kind of the first piece to this big monster. But then after that, we're also talking about leadership development with professional development. This would be at the district office level, the principalship level, and even assistant principals and things like that. And I'll get into that in just a few minutes. Leadership coaching, kind of did a very good job of talking about that and what that looks like. And then our ongoing meetings that we would have with our team. Because the only way we can make sure that we're having an effective implementation is through those benchmarking meetings that we're having as well with district office personnel. So the strategic planning piece that we begin with, this is the IPAs. The instructional practice assessments is kind of a 360, if you will, of each school. So your 32 different sites, we would come in with consultants and we would actually be in that school for a day. If it's a larger school, maybe 2 days, because of just time constraints and trying to get to as many classrooms as we can get to. When we go into the classrooms, we're looking at what students are doing. And we look at rigor and the rigor of the lesson and what is happening and the students are actually doing. We look at the relevance and what the relevance is. We look at the engagement. What type of engagement's happening there? Students that are engaged are less likely to be behavior problems because they're engaged. And we also look at the relationship piece. Everything that we do is founded on relationships. That's the foundation. If you don't have solid relationships, then none of this is possible. So it's got to start with great relationships. The way we kicked off the meeting tonight with just your chief of police, what a wonderful way. That's relational. That's what it's about. It's about a community working together for the betterment of kids. And that's what we love and what this is all about. When we look at those rubrics that we have, those 4 different rubrics, we'll kind of look again at what the students are doing. Along with that, we're also going to talk to a group of teachers. We'll talk to a group of students, and we'll talk to a group of stakeholders. With that, then there will be a comprehensive report for each school that really kind of encapsulates what we saw and captured in that day. Granted, it's a snapshot, so it's just one day, but you can kind of see exactly where your school is performing. So as a leader, that's powerful for me. I get to see exactly from an outside perspective where we are performing and what that level of rigor looks like in the classroom, what that level of engagement looks like. Also, what are my parents saying? What are my students saying? What are my teachers saying? So it's truly a 360 look at what's happening in the building. So great starting point. So we have a benchmark for where we are right now. And then the growth model from there, which brings me to my next point, the professional development. This is something we would look at starting right away, late July, early August, and this again would be with principals, it would be with district office staff, and it would also be with assistant principals or possibly even leadership teams. And this would be all together working for a common goal. The coursework that we have is creating that culture of rigor, and then secondly is that building instructional capacity, and then the third one is the leveraging the systematic data that is going to be coming in. We do these throughout the year, so because they're so heavy. So we would do one, like I said, late July, early August. Then we would come back and do another one, maybe December, January, and then we also would do the final one maybe right before summer kickoff next year. And there's 3 courses that would happen, so that would happen over a period of time. Each one has its own set of, I guess you could call it homework. So as a leader or a leadership team, I'm going to be making these 20-day plans, and then I'm going to make sure that I have an implementation plan for these 20-day plans. I'll start this process before we actually do the IPAs, because when the IPAs come back and you have all this data, there's going to be pieces that you're already working with in your strategic plan as a principal. The last thing we want to do is create more work. We want to take what the school is doing well and the areas of focus that they already have, and we want to marry that with what the data is showing. This is what the data showed us, and you're already working on this piece right here, so let's work on that. Let's make this a focused area. And then that's the area of focus for that year, and that's where our coaches will come in and help with that piece. Bring me to my next point. Leadership coaches, we have them across the country as well, and these are going to be folks that are practitioners. Dr. Tassi, who's here with me in a minute, she'll share with you kind of the layout of what the implementation would actually look like. But that said, all of us have been practitioners at some point. We've all been teachers. We've all been assistant principals, district office. I always say I'm a surviving district office staff worker. But it's so important to know that these are not people coming into schools that have never been there before and never sat in those seats. Because if you've never been a teacher, it's hard to talk about instruction with a teacher. If you've never been a principal, it's hard to talk to a principal about how we can help you. But this is helping that principal become less managerial and more instructional. which has to happen in today's society because schools now have changed to where principals can't just be good managers. They need to be good managers, but they also have to be instructional leaders. And this is that shift that Dr. Burkhart was talking about a minute ago. It is a shift and it is change, but trying to get the mindset that we have to make that shift. The reason we talk about assistant principals and maybe that leadership team, you need to build a bench as well. What if you lose a leader through attrition or whatever, there's a retirement or something like that? Building a bench where we have people ready to take that next step. And, you know, as a former principal, that was my job, I felt like, for assistant principals, is to get them ready so that they can take that next step. I hated to see them go, but that's part of my job, is to help them with that. It's the same thing here. We're wanting to try to build capacity within Berkeley to where we have a great bench of leaders so that we can go to next man up. We also know that the research tells us teachers aren't quitting the profession because they hate teaching. They quit the leader. And if we make quality leaders and we create cultures and environments that teachers just love coming to every day because they feel empowered, the principals feel empowered, the district office is just loving how empowered everybody's feeling because it's moving student success, that's when you're winning. That's when you're winning. We've had some success stories. I can't go into a lot of detail with that this past year with a few districts because that data is embargoed, but two specific districts here in West Virginia that I'm just so tickled and can't wait till that data comes out about some things that have happened in some schools that we're working with. So, that said, in this partnership, we'll look at student evidence, we'll look at what great instruction looks like, and we're going to get to where the principal feels confident and feels comfortable going into that classroom and seeing that instruction. And whether I'm a high school principal going into that construction class or I'm going into that ELA class, I'm going to feel confident. I know what good rigor is. I know what good engagement looks like. That's where we're going to get to with working with principals. Helping empower them to be great facilitators in their building. That said, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Tatasi because she's a lot better explaining things than I am, but she'll talk a little bit more about that implementation piece. Go ahead, Dr. Tatasi.
Hi, everyone. Andrea Tatasi, and before I start, I just want to share with you, I'm a true practitioner. I started out 30 years ago, I can't believe it, as a middle school math teacher, as a middle school principal, and retired as a high school principal before coming on as a consultant for 6 years. And then I came into the director position about 5 years ago. I still consult through our own company because I like to stay fresh in the field. And I feel like it's a principal going in the classroom and covering classes or still teaching. It just keeps us fresh and still in touch with what kids are going through. I'd like to say we bring a lot of credibility to our work. Our consultants are all tried and true. They don't come on board with us unless they go through an extensive vetting process. They have to have been successful in the field under some pretty tough conditions, meaning they've overcome obstacles or things that weren't easy for them, that they really showed demonstrated leadership or teaching experience. So I feel really confident with our consultant pool. And my job is to make sure that the goals we set out at the very beginning, when we work with Betty Ann and Tana on that, and the whole team, that we're meeting those goals. That's my job. So I will be asking questions with the consultants and with the team. You know, where's the evidence? What did we say we were going to do? Did we do it? How is it done? And how do we know? And then what's next? So every time a consultant visits for coaching, right, assuming the PD's been started and now we're working in buildings, they will work with those principals to establish what their goals should be. It needs to be aligned with your goals, with the strategic planning for the district. It needs to be connected directly to student outcomes. And it also needs to be something that we show evidence from our IPAs that needs to be focused upon. So it should be an area for growth. We're going to stretch them. But before we can do that, we have to also establish a good relationship with our principals. So we are super intentional with our consultants about building trust, about building relationships, because we know and research tells us that people will not take risks unless they trust us. So we will work really hard to build that foundation quick and early on We've got a lot of experience with that. And I'm pretty sure that our people coming in with such experience lends a lot of credibility for that. And we're here to help. We're not here to look for bad things and call them out. We're here to really help people. And everything that we do goes back to looking at teaching and learning through the eyes of our kids. That's why I love these IPAs. Because when we go in, we're really looking at what does this day look like? What does this science class look like through the eyes of the kid? Are they engaged because they're compliant? Or are they engaged because they're excited? And we want that relevance to be in place with the rigor so that they will take risks in their learning and achieve at far higher levels. And we've been really successful with that, so I'm really, really proud of our organization. So I would work very carefully and closely with the team here. We would have a cadence of about every 2 weeks or so implementation calls where we review summary reports that are submitted by our consultants for each and every visit. And those summary reports will talk about what was our goal, right? What are we going to start with? What do we see that shows we're moving towards goal attainment? What's the evidence? What can we see? Not what do you tell me, but what can I see? Because we're in the buildings with our leaders. Then what's the next step? And how are we going to get there? And as a consultant, I can tell you, and I shared this with the team too, we know far more that a project is going to go well by what happens when we're not here. We need how we leave it to continue and to continue to work until we come back again. And we're always looking for where do we leave it, where's the evidence? I'm so excited to see this. I know you were working on it. And we will, those summary reports document all of that, and we'll have meetings along the way about every 2 weeks. And if we're not meeting goal or we're not along the way with progress monitoring, we will make adjustments. We'll dig in as a implementation team to figure out what's going on. What are the barriers? What's happening? Why aren't we seeing growth? And that's my job, to make sure that we are showing growth and that you can see it and there's evidence of that. And I think that's it for me. Okay.
And that's almost it for me.
Okay.
Y'all had a long day. Y'all had a lot
Y'all
of
have
people
to.
talking at you, so I'm gonna try to be quick. Over 30 years of experience with our organization as far as doing the leadership work. And again, that's helping leaders become better at that practice of being truly instructional leaders, because that's the shift that has to happen in order to help student success, actually that student achievement improve. So, that said, I'll turn it over to Betty Ann at this point.
Thank you all. So, you just heard a lot from Tana and also our friends here from ICLE about what this partnership would look like. So I come at the tail end to tell you about how can we fund this partnership. So that's right down my alley of expertise here for the district. So what are we looking at to fund this project for the current coming school year? We're looking at using what is called our ARP-ESSER funding, which is the third round of federal stimulus money that we received from the federal government. ARP meaning the American Recovery Plan, and it's still part of the ESSER funding. So we had ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3, and we are going towards the end of this ESSER 3 funding that we have. So the total grant award for ESSER 3 was $38,221,845.80. That was our total grant award just for the third portion of ARP funding. Our obligation deadline for that funding is September 30th of 2024. So that's not this coming September, but the following September. And what that means in our world is everything we say we're going to be spending or spent has to be spent, or kind of say we're going to spend it by that point. So we have to say what we're going to do, and then liquidation means we have to have it all paid out by November. And at this point, there is zero evidence that the feds are going to extend this funding beyond September 30th, 2024. So if we don't have it obligated to spend, they will take it from, the state, they'll take it back from the states. So that's what we're looking at using for this funding, is part of our ARP-ESSER funding. That's a good one. Okay, there. So our original ARP-ESSER budget that we had, that we presented to you a couple years ago when this rolled out, There were 4 buckets, basically, for lack of a better word, that the Fed said that they wanted all of the states and the districts to be sure that we adhered to those buckets of spending. And so that's kind of when we worked as a district team, we said what we were going to do with our funding. We had money that was going to be set aside for overall district achievement, student learning as a result of the pandemic and what happened during being, our outage and being out. So a lot of that had to go towards district, leadership or efforts that were really going to show growth and achievement in students. We did have a small portion of the set aside that was to be used for extended year programming. So our summer school programs that we've had for the last couple years, that was due in part to a district set aside that we had to put from this $38 million towards summer learning. Another piece of that, at the bottom there, were after school programming. So we had, a portion that was set aside that we had to be used to only specifically for programs that were going to support kids during after school time. And that's during the regular school year. So it could be after school or summer or after school or Saturdays, but it had to only be during the time that school was in session. And then we had a chunk that they called district LEA needs, other district LEA needs. And you guys know, because we've had multiple kind of discussions about this at several other board meetings, that a large part of our percentage of funding to look for overall district and student achievement was put towards salaries. So we, hired additional staff. I remember we had discussions about the academic coaches and the TISs. And so we've put a lot of money towards hiring additional staff. So that's where we really concentrated our efforts in academic recovery. And that's why I just kind of talked about, lays it out there. Of the 38 million, a minimum of that 38 million, about 25% of that had to be set aside towards the learning loss, which is what we talked about with when we hired staff. And then we had our extended year program, and that 589,000, that was given to us. That was our pre-populated set aside. We have far exceeded that 589,000 in the summer programs that we have had for our students from elementary up through high school. So that one is not an issue. We have far exceeded our extended year program. Our extended day programming, we are on track to spending that this year as well. And then our $17,000 for county discretion. And we have done some other things in there. We've had portables that are in that. So those were the buckets that we talked about. So how are we on track to spending? To date, we've spent approximately $21,000 of the total grant.
It's million. It's million. Yeah, it's million.
Oh, yes. We are not on track if we've only spent $21,000. Trust me. Woo, Nelly. Jim Butts is listening and sweating from the middle of the state. Yes, to date, we've spent approximately $21 million of our total grant, and that includes encumbrances in our next payroll. Our set aside for learning loss, between FY22 and FY23, we have met approximately $6 million of that set aside and for payroll. And now we're actually going to roll over and have FY24 payroll added to that $6 million. So all of the people that we've been paying from ESSER along the way will now be added into that ESSER funding for FY24, and we'll pay that payroll out of that. To date, the majority of the learning loss, as I have said, has been set aside and allocated only towards salaries. This partnership with ICLE, what I like about it is that we are going to be using the learning loss set aside that we still have. We're providing growth and leadership for our district and school administration and our rising assistant principals, and we have seen some turnover in our district leadership. So having younger principals, younger assistant principals, with not a whole lot of experience behind them. So this will give them that confidence and that experience. So I'm really excited about that. And of course, we're all here for the same reason, which is growth and boost of student academic achievement. So those are my pieces of what I like about the partnership with ICLE, and even the growth on our district leadership. As a district office administrator myself, I have been so fortunate to have this role. But I was very, very unique. I came from a classroom position and kind of filtered my way up here, and I missed that building leadership. And that's always kind of weighed on my heart as to, I listen to our principals and I try to help them as much as I can with the things that I'm good at, which is the budgeting. But when it comes to really helping them at the school level, I think as a district office administrator myself will help me to grow, as well as some of my colleagues at the office. So I'm anxious for that. Now, I would not be a good steward of federal funds if I didn't talk to you about compliance. I live in the world of compliance every day. So how is this compliant to all of the things that we need to be sure that we're compliant on for spending federal funds? We have forwarded the contractual agreement to legal counsel and it has been reviewed. So we have done that. I have discussed, as our team has, the need for this service with the West Virginia Department of Ed, specifically, honestly, the Office of Federal Programs, because that's where all my compliance needs are met there. So upon approval of the contractual agreement, the county plan for ARP will need updated and approved by the West Virginia Department of Ed Federal Programs Department. So that ARP plan, we submitted that one time, but I have to update it every time we make a little change or a tweak to it. So this would be something that we would be changing to our ARP plan. And so I said, if we change it, what do I need to do? And we just open that up in our planning system and make the necessary changes. So I feel very confident that what we're doing is good stewardship of federal funding. It is compliant and it is allowable under ARP ESSERF. And most of all, it will bring good things to children and it will grow our district and our school building leadership.
Questions by members of the board? Ms. Power?
I feel like I'm looking up to Ms. Fowler.
Okay, Ms. Long?
How many districts are you in West Virginia?
Ooh, let's see, 1, 2.
Just curious.
At least 5 I can think of.
5, there's about 7 though, 8 actually that we worked in. But currently, 5 we're working currently.
And I see you'll be here on free professional development days, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
But then during the year, you'll be in the schools periodically? Is that how that?
Yes.
I was just trying to make sure I got
So
it
the
right.
coaches will come, and I think it was a day reporter is what Dr. Price shared earlier. And what I was just sitting here, I didn't say what we would be doing when we're in the schools. The coaches would be basically working with that principal and leadership team for that day. So as a former leadership coach myself, one of the highest need, best ways to spend our time is visiting classrooms and really practicing how to engage in a feedback conversation that's formative. Not a feedback report stuck in the inbox or an email that said, I came by your classroom, you need to do this, this, and this. That turns teachers off. We want teachers, our goal is to have them lean into their leaders, to respect them as instructional leaders, to know that they have credibility and that they're still on their game. And that's really what we do. So if Chris is my principal and he's really having a hard time, and I'm gonna go in there and we're gonna visit a classroom, we'll come out and I say, so how would you start that conversation with that teacher? And we really, along with the instructional moves that the teacher needs to make, we also talk about how are you going to build a trusting relationship with that teacher so now they trust you and they invite you back in their room. It's all part of the whole, we're trying to move forward a really heavy stone, but knowing that the relationships and instruction for kids is really what's going to do it.
Well, and I don't want to monopolize this, pardon me, but I had one more question or concern. And I know you all know this, but teachers are all, it's like, okay, now they're going to put something else on us to keep us from actually doing our job. So I don't want this to be like that, and I don't think it will be, but I guess you have to soften it to make sure that you're just not interrupting their work day and you keep them from doing what they feel like they're there to do. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, so our support is leadership support. This first part is all about the leader, because what research tells us is that leader is the needle mover in that building. Yeah. So we will not be interrupting teachers.
Okay.
We will work with the district on a communication plan with principals to let them know, this is why we're here. We're here to help you and to be shoulder to shoulder with you and work alongside you. But it will not impact teachers' schedules, pullouts, time. We will not take teachers away from
Okay,
kids.
well, that was
None of that, yeah.
somewhat of a concern I had.
And Mrs. Long, to kind of also validate what you said, there is a district that I have a somewhat of a closer relationship with in West Virginia, and ironically, they said, please, if you do anything with a partnership like this, the most important advice we can give you is transparency and communication.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it has to come
We've been down that road.
from all of us here in a way that our administration understands, and then we assure our teaching staff that they understand.
Well,
So
yeah.
that is going to be a very heavy load on all of our part here at this office to ensure that there are open lines of communication, that it's well communicated, and it's well received.
Well, because it can't be, well, you told us it was gonna be like this, but that's not what's happening.
Right.
That's why we're gonna meet periodically too and get pulse checks, and see if there are any climate issues so that we can be in front of those.
Mr. Martin or Mr. Ray?
Sorry, guys.
Well, is there a price tag?
That's a
Right
good
now?
question.
Yeah, that was the next one.
Yes, yes, absolutely, there is. We are looking at, for the 24 school year, a 1,200,000, I'm so sorry, I didn't wear my over 40 glasses. A little over $1 million, $1,026,560 of our ARP ESSER funding that we have for next year.
For this one school year?
Yes. And then we have a year 2 and a year 3 follow-up that is significantly less expensive, that we will not be using ARP ESSER for. And then at that point, we will look at reevaluating my Title II funding that we received from the Department of Ed that helps, really, the main goal of Title II is professional learning.
So repeat that figure again.
It is 1,026,560.
So let me make a comment here about this. Throughout the year, we have, each of you on the board have expressed some concerns about leadership and consistency and high turnover rate, achievement being at the foundation of everything that we're supposed to be working on. So throughout the year, we have been searching. We have been looking for things that are going to help us with student achievement. And we realize that, roughly half, if it maybe more than half of our school level administrators are new to the schools within the last 2 or 3 years. And that's a significant, as she said, that's a significant needle mover. So what we look for is, when I met with Tana and when I met with Betty Ann, along with other members of our teaching and learning department, we looked for a program to be able to help us provide some professional development, provide some leadership, provide some guidance to the top level that we're then going to be able to provide to teachers as we work through this. We felt like the most important thing was to address that leadership role and to make sure that they're looking for the right things, and it's such a large task with so many new people in our buildings. We're behind on professional development. Talk to you throughout the year about being behind in professional development for our teachers and for all different areas, but for our principals, our administrators, it's no different. So Betty Ann's part of this is, when I met with her, I said, okay, look, these things are not cheap. We're gonna find something that, if we're truly gonna find something that moves the needle, that works for student achievement, we've got to be able to entertain all of this. So we reevaluated the grant monies that we have to spend, and we figured out that this is what we want to spend that money on. We have to spend this money or we don't get the money. So even though it's $1 million that we're talking about this year, we have to spend $1 million on something. So we feel like this is we're prioritizing that money and this professional development this year. The partnership is going to be over 2 more years after this year, and we're front loading a lot of that professional development so that when we have to then start footing that bill as, Berkeley County, it's more budget friendly for us because we front loaded a lot of this professional development that is in grant money that we're going to have to spend anyway. So, the next couple of years, that number drops way down. So again, this is a 3-year plan. And I don't have the numbers in front of me for the next few years, but
honestly also say that in this, we're looking at almost 180 days worth of services that are actually happening here in Berkeley County. So when you look, you just hear the number, but when you look at what's coming with that, it's 180 days worth of service that these that the consultants will be here, and they'll have the same folks. So whoever ends up at Mountain Ridge Middle is going to be the person that barring any major other kind of catastrophe, will be their coach. So they will develop a relationship. But then also in that, we get keynote speakers. We'll have a kickoff, a district kickoff where we have a speaker. We will get written reports for each of our schools based on the reports based on the observations that they see there. So that is also part of what comes with this.
I just thought it was important for you to see this is what we have prioritized to use that grant money for, that we're going to be needing to spend that money on achievement in some manner, and that we believe that a 3-year plan and front loading that is probably the best way for us to do it. That's not probably, it is the best way for us to do that.
So this takes care of the professional staff, just professional, correct?
Yes, for the professional development, correct.
Yes. Well, we also call service professional development.
I'm just saying.
And I think when you think about what the leader is gaining from the process, they'll take that knowledge to help support service personnel as well, especially our service personnel that are directly in classrooms servicing students.
This is not.
ECATs and the AIDS and
The professional development this year is for our administrators. Is that correct?
It is.
The professional development this year is focused on the administrators. So it's a specific portion of the professional personnel for professional development.
Yes.
So, but then it will be on us to provide that to the teachers and the aides and anybody else that's in that group.
But it will drift down to.
Correct.
Drift down to all employees.
Absolutely.
When you're, the whole thought of making that leader the very best that they can be, the trickle-down effect to where now they're helping that teacher. And again, it's that coaching type model, that principal being that coach for that teacher that they can lean into. And it's not ever really that adversarial piece. It's more of they're here to help me in how I can, because I'm becoming an instructional leader as the principal. And then I'm also helping that assistant in that classroom or whatever, because we are working for that one goal of helping this student, and we're calling them by name to make sure that they're achieving the different goals that they need. Because anybody that touches a child's life needs to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do and how we're moving forward.
Mr. Wright?
You mentioned empowering teachers and principals. I think Ms. Powell, you mentioned training for board office staff as well. Is that
Teaching and learning, the Department of Teaching and Learning. It will be in alignment, and we'll all be collaborative and working towards the same goal and supporting those goals. And the other thing that's really good about this firm, Rigor is not new to our county and our district. It is one of our initiatives, which was one of the reasons that what they were dealing with was very appealing to us. So we've been working with our principals already on Rigor and co-teaching and how that impacts instruction and student learning. They will provide that outside look where we may be missing something because we are not impacting students the way we should be in one school, where our culture might be a little bit different, and they'll be able to provide my department with those tools to help support that as we go through this process, and even after they're gone. This is something that will continue after they are gone. Rigor and relevance And relationships, I mean, we've been saying that for years, but do principals really understand that? Can they really lead that? And with all the challenges that we've had many in the county, we need to try to get that leadership skill back to where it needs to be so our students are performing better. So that's what this is all about, and I know that first year cost sounds alarming, and when I saw it, I was like, ah! But then as I, the more I got to speak with them and the more I learned about their approach, the more I thought this is exactly what we need. We have got to really focus on our leadership, and it's young, it's changing, and this is one way we can do it. Our leaders need to be those instructional leaders that they used to be, and giving them those tools and that support that they need so they can do that again. And hearing it from an outside group of people. Here's what we're saying, this is what we'd like to do to help you. I feel like in the county, that's where we are. We're making gains, we're making small gains, small student achievement gains. Is it what we want? Absolutely not. They'll understand our county culture with our permanent substitutes that we have. It's not going to change. How can they help that principal be that building leader and build relationships so it's impacting that student instruction? So it really is a collaborative effort, and I'm very excited about it, and I really hope that you will consider this so we can move forward with it. I think it'll be great for our district.
Well, building that relationship without them thinking that you're trying to tell them how to do their job.
Exactly. It's key. You have to build that bridge, and it's shoulder to shoulder, not this is how you ought to do it. It can't be that way.
I'm sorry, Dean.
No, I would say that really wasn't my question really wasn't that. My question, I mean, I'm still going back to the empowerment part. That word really caught me because, in the training, because
yes, sir.
My question is, are you going to be also doing this with teaching and learning staff? Because if the principals don't feel empowered by the board office, then they will be less likely, so then the trickle down really will stop.
It doesn't, right.
So I'm not saying anybody's not doing a job.
I didn't hear that, and I'm an outsider, so I didn't hear that. You're fine.
Systemic.
But it has to be systemic, and so that's why when we were talking with the district, they have to be in the PD, because we have to all say the same language. We have to be talking the commonality of the language that we're speaking, so that we all have heard the same things and are saying the same things. But two, showing that we're all in this together, because as a principal, I have to feel comfortable to pick up the phone and call Tana. I've got this going on and I've got this issue, but now I've also got a coach that's right there with me that I have got a relationship with now, and say, I'm trying to figure out how to do this schedule to get this group of students into one more intervention session with ELA. Help me think that through. Help me think. So the empowerment comes from, hopefully they're seeing these folks at the district office. I hate saying it that way, these folks. I was one of these folks one time. But seeing the district office as a team player, we're in this with you, because we're right here with you as well. When we're going to talk and work with principals, we're going to talk about student evidence meetings, student data meetings. And it's pivotal as a leader that you're in those meetings, and that you're not pushing that off on an assistant principal or something else, because teachers have to see you in there, because they want to look to you as the leader. And if you're in there, they know how important it is now, and they're going to make sure that they're working hard to get the student evidence where it needs to be, because the principal says that's important. It's the same premise here. The district office needs to be in these PD meetings so that the principals see that this is important. This is nothing extra. I've already got a strategic plan that I've got to act on. I've already got priorities for the school that I have to act on. But how can I encompass that and be super focused to where it's going to improve student achievement? And that's that empowerment piece, because if we can make the principals feel that empowerment, that in turn will hopefully turn it to where now they're going to have that same impact with teachers. Being in a classroom and doing a teacher observation has that negative feel to it sometimes, but that has to happen for improvement. As a principal, I can't not go into classrooms. I can't talk about instruction if I don't. So I have to go into classrooms, But it's not good enough just to go into classrooms. Now I have to have a debrief with the teacher. And it should not be adversarial. It should be that conversation with, how do you think your lesson went today? What went extremely well that you were really proud of? What didn't go so well that you wish you could improve on? Normally, when you're having a conversation like that, the teacher's going to say anything that you might have had is maybe a little bit of a concern. And we all want something to grow on. But teachers need to feel that empowerment that my principal knows me. They know what I am and who I am and how I teach, and they know my kids, and all of that helps with that empowerment piece. It also touches the aides and things like that. They're in those classrooms too, because they're just as much a part of the students' lives as anybody else. So I'm hoping that kind of answers that question for you.
And I think this is also setting aside the time for the principals to have the conversation with their coach and to kind of say, okay, we're giving you the time, you do those walkthroughs and you do that walkthrough and those look-fors with your coach, and you do it together, and this is the time to do it.
Ms. Power.
Yeah.
Ms. Power.
I actually was gonna say that I'm encouraged by hearing, about this program. And I think it's something that, to Tana's point, we've gone through a lot as the school system, as a country, for the last few years. And, I think we should give it a go. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, other questions by members of the board?
So 1.2, year one, year two.
200-some thousand.
It's way down. I think it's 3 and then 2.
The next 2 years are about 500,000 combined.
Yes.
The next 2 years.
300,000 and 200,000.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes.
Because the heavy lift will be year one.
And again, that heavy lift is the IPAs, those instructional practice assessments. When you think again of 32 schools, and some of those are large, if they're more than 500 students, we like to do 2 days. So when you're thinking about that, there's almost 50 days, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that's part of that lift.
So per calendar year, about 250,000. In our central office, it sounds like we're not going into our schools. That's why we're bringing someone in.
No, we are going into the schools.
So how is this different?
We're all going into the schools. And we're actually gonna, from our department, we are going into the schools. And we are also this year going to piggyback on what they're doing with our executive directors and our secondary elementary people as well in my department. So but we've been going in, but we haven't been able to make the impact that we need to make. We're making some, and it's not the only thing we can do either is go into schools. There's a lot of other things that, we are responsible for.
We are a small but mighty team.
Yes, we are. And
Mr.
we
Martin,
also, if I could just say, we covered over 60 days of instruction for teachers this year out of my department. They covered 60 full days of instruction, and those were ones we recorded. So we are in the schools. We've been trying to support the schools and help them every way that we can. We work through the strategic plan with them. We're providing work sessions during our instructional meetings, but we need more. We need more.
Yeah, the bottom line is that, it starts with our student achievement, which we're not happy with, and we want to improve that. And to improve that, we feel like we need to improve the needle mover, the leader of the school that's going to monitor everything and make sure that they're monitoring the right things. So we're not happy with where things are right now. There are more new people. The turnover in the last few years has been so high. We've got such a large task. We want to make sure that we get in there and to get the most efficient use out of this. This is something that we could probably divide up with our people and do over the course of 6, 8, 10 years to get into everybody. But by that time, you're going to have more turnover. We really believe that we need to do this quickly, so we need a larger team of people to be able to pull that off, and that's what they specialize in.
And we have 2 schools that are under under ESSA, Comprehensive School Improvement Schools, a middle school and a primary school, and then 2 schools that are designated due to a demographic data with their special ed population. So we have 4 schools that are just our 4 of our Title I schools that are under a designation status as well. So we feel like this will really provide that leadership team support in their process too. And the state is also supporting us with those schools.
We also have those 12 target schools as well that we are focusing on. And through COVID and whatnot, none of that information was given to us. This happened this year. And looking at that and everything we have to do and need to do to make sure students are getting the best education that they can, it's going to benefit to provide that leadership coaching for these principals so they can help not just this year and then 2 years later, but have that foundation.
I'm looking at it mainly of a more grow your own, who knows better than a Berkeley County principal than a Berkeley County principal. That's someone that has projected themselves and wants to move into the board office and just be able to really know the system. And we hear all the time, board is top heavy, but our community is going to hear we're spending $250,000 a year on consultants. That's going to be why they're coming in and telling us what to do versus what because Berkeley County is so different. And what the students here are different.
So if I can speak to that personally,
Yeah.
I was a principal for 30 years. And I always needed extra support and help when it came to student achievement. I would have opened my arms to individuals like this because sometimes my student achievement was great, sometimes it wasn't. I dedicated my life to being that leader. And I think we need to respect those people who are in that position and give them that support. And the county office, the Department of Teaching and Learning, will be collaborating and working to help continue with that achievement. It's not just turning it over for an outside firm to come in here and say, oh, this is what you're doing incorrectly. We're not doing the things we need to do or our student achievement would be better, don't you agree? We've got to look at some things. We have some great principals. We have some very young principals. We have a lot of challenges in our schools. And they need that extra support so that they are that building leader, that instructional leader to impact instruction. And we want to make sure we provide them that support.
Ken, I agree with all that, but some of those problems are outside circumstances.
You're right.
From home level.
You're absolutely
that
right.
smart people can't tell
Yes.
much about. So.
But when they come here, all they have are those 4 walls, and they have a teacher in front of them, and we're responsible for them when they walk in that door, no matter what has happened. So.
I respect the comment of grow your own because I believe in that. I believe that you, I did a whole dissertation on it when I wrote my doctorate, and that's something that we did in a previous district I was in, and I was responsible for that. But going back to Tana's point, sometimes having that outside voice of people that have seen it in other districts across the country, and have other ideas that we've never even thought about. It just, if nothing else, it starts to move my mind a little bit toward, I couldn't do it that way, but I could do it this way. And it just, it changes it, but it does not take away from Berkeley because we're building it here in Berkeley. That's why, I feel like it's important we have assistant principals in there because that is building them up. And we're at that point building capacity within the people here so that hopefully they'll stay here because they love what they're doing and they love this support that they're getting. That's the whole premise about it. But I appreciate that comment because I believe in that one.
I think this will help us build, I heard somebody mention earlier, build I call it a pool. It'll help us build the bench support, the people that down the road in a couple of years when retirement happens, we've got people trained, ready to step in, which hadn't happened in the last few years, and that's why we're in. with a large number of replacements right now, we're behind the 8 ball a little bit. So I respect what you're saying, and I think that this will help us keep the people that we have here ready to step up here instead of going elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it's more, again, I don't know if I got the point out, but results, of seeing the results, seeing what our data was last meeting. So improving that. I didn't see any data in the presentation. So I would like to see some from districts that are like ours, that how you affected principals, assistant principals, and strip it down from there.
Love to share that with you. Now, there's embargoed data right now that we cannot share, but there are 2 specific districts in West Virginia that we could share. We talk with them again, those bi-weekly meetings that we talk through, and very excited about some of the things that have happened there, and we'd love to share that. Just have to give it time when the state says it's okay to talk about it.
Or even other districts that are the same size from previous years.
I've been sitting here waiting my knuckles want to speak, but I always want to wait till our board members
I know you have a
speak.
list, so.
Yeah, I did. And, so I don't want to volley with you. I'm just going to make some comments here, and please spare me. Ms. Power, did I give you a chance? I know you, yes, I did. But do you have anything
Yes, you
else?
did.
Do you have anything else you want to say before I jump in here?
I do hear Mr. Martin's concern, regarding the money. At what point, I guess the only question I would ask, and it's not just, towards him, or it's the group as a whole, at
Still there?
what point do we raise our hand and say, well, we can't get it, that we're losing great people?
I didn't get what she said.
Could you repeat that, please?
I was just saying that we keep bleeding a lot of great people from our district,
Right.
and I'm concerned that we're gonna just continue bleeding if we don't ask for help to stop it.
Right. Okay, I'm going to jump in now with your permission. And I don't want to go point to point. You all say something. Just hear me out and say that guy's nuts, and let's move on here. Okay. First offhand, what I heard you and I heard one of the other members here say was that if you go to look at the exit interviews of our employees, one of the things that we hear often, and I've read from batches that Dr. Schooley has provided, in the exit interviews, is a lot of people are leaving, and one of the compliments they say is, we have wonderful staff development. We make all this investment in our human resources, and then they walk away with the goodies. And I've been hearing this here in that conversation. Another thing is that if this is going to work, and this is a challenge, I'm thinking about offering an amendment to the motion, but if this is going to work, we need to sit down with the principals, not us, the board, but you all need to sit down with the principals and say, here's a list of all, and let them bring the list. Here's a list of all these things I have to do.
Yeah, that's my.
And that's what you said. And then you sit down with them and you say, we need to start cutting some of these things out so that there's space, that they realize there's space for this new program to fit in, instead of being another stack on the horse's back that their legs are going to crumble. So I'm tempted to amend whatever we approve here and say, you have to sit down and curtail some of the requirements with your principals and create the time and space so that they realize the value you're putting on this program, and not making it another damn thing I have to deal with, is what they're doing. And so I'm thinking about saying, not telling you what to do, but sit down with the principals and say, here's let the principals bring a list, say, which one of these things can we cut so that we can do what we need to do here? And that would help in the sale of this project. I like what I heard there, I think Ms. Burkhardt said this, customizing the strategic plan for the school rather than creating another thing that you have to check off that you performed. That was a very impressive point that I picked up there. I know that you all will be monitoring growth. This board needs to see the growth being monitored at the same time. I have a question here because we may have a principal or two who's not cutting the mustard. What in this process do you have a role to, do you all have a dialogue? We don't need to be involved in the board because if we have to take action, we have to be at arm's length. But is there in this whole process, I'm sure you find principals whose bucket has a big hole in the bottom of it and they're just not picking it up. What do you all have in that process? That's a question.
Unfortunately, you're right. There are times that you're working with principals that there is that gap, and I'll use your analogy, a hole in the bucket, and you're trying to do what you can to hold that hole. Because coaching them up, it's much easier to try to coach up what you have than to try to go find brand new and bring in and then retrain and all of that. But through this process, there's those ongoing coaching meetings, and then there's those summative pieces that we'll have that are reports. And when things are being kind of put out there as far as these are some things that need to happen, you need to be in this many classrooms to make sure that you're becoming that instructional leader we need you to be. There's going to be solid evidence that that's either happened or that's not happening. And at that point, we do work with districts that, so I'll need some of this evidence for our file and whatnot. And again, it's y'all's evidence. So ultimately that it does happen. I hate to say that it does, but it does. But our ultimate goal is to save everybody, because we know how hard it is to try to train up somebody that's brand spanking new.
And our reports show evidence of what we see, they're not subjective. So you all can take from those reports what you want, but you'll be able to clearly see if, like I said earlier, it's what happens when we're not there. We'll know when we come back. It's crystal clear if steps have been put into place, and that'll all be in those reports.
But it's made to be a coaching type piece.
Exactly.
It's not punitive at all. It's made to be a true.
I was just wondering, it sounds like a thin line that you have to.
It really is, because you're
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
relationships and you're trying to continue that relationship piece. And there's nothing punitive there. And again, that's the reason the district office is involved on those PD days, because we are building a true team concept, one Berkeley, and moving forward to help student success. And with that said, there are sometimes though that you might have that piece, and it has to turn into more of that. This is not improved. This has not happened.
Right. And final, two things. I have to acknowledge and admire what you just said. We have problems. We have to address it. And finally, we're acknowledging we have those deficiencies. We're just not whipping out numbers and graphs and everything else. We have problems. And the first thing you do when you face a problem is acknowledge it. And I think that is a big step this county has taken with this program. I have a lot of hope for it. I was reading, and I'm only going to read a paragraph. I don't care for the guy a lot of times, George Will. But sometimes you have to have a dictionary to understand the words he's using in his writing. But he led off with this paragraph. He says about education. And there are things in this article I don't agree with, but this paragraph started. He said, time was when the school year ended, parents worried about summer learning loss. He said, nowadays, there is less learning to worry about losing. And that is a biting comment. And he's not being kind to public education here. But we have to acknowledge our shortcomings, and we have to be willing to try to address them. And I'm very encouraged about this program. But I'm going to ask for a motion for the approval of this action item.
I move that we approve the program.
Okay, second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I'm going to offer an amendment to the motion, directing the staff, and we'll be voting on the amendment first before we move on. So you all vote it down if you disagree with it. And I never have any reservation knowing that you'll vote it down 4-1, right? But I'm going to offer an amendment directing the staff to sit down with the school the school principals, and look at the list of requirements and find things they can eliminate so that these principals realize the importance of this program by creating time for it. So it's a directive to the, basically the central office staff to sit down with the principals and look at see if there are some assignments they can be eliminated so that there's time created for this. Do you all understand my amendment?
Yes, in other words, you want, and
I want a second.
Yeah, well, okay, I got you. Second.
Okay,
Just trying to explain.
go ahead.
In other words, you want to make sure that, because that was a concern with me, that there's enough time, that they don't feel like there's something piled onto their list, on
Something
their
else.
shoulders.
Exactly.
That this doesn't create more problems for them. That's what, I don't want them to feel that way. So I think that's what he's trying to say. Let's weed down some of the things. Some of these people have 100, 200, 300 IEPs that they have to go to. So those are the things that take time and constraints, that something's got to be whittled off their list. I second that.
Okay, anyone else want to speak for or against it? She's already spoken for it. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, now we're on the amended version of this thing to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve item number 8.4, enter into a contract with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt International Center for Leadership in Education. Did I read that right? All those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye.
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
I won't be able to see if I don't ask this. The 1.2 first year, can you break down what that's gonna be? I know Tana talked about that earlier.
And I am in my mind saying, oh, Betty Ann, why didn't you? And I do, I have like a little menu here.
Okay.
So if I
Full
can,
breakdown.
I can tell you what it is, and I can gladly send that out to all of you.
Yeah, well, that'd be appreciated.
Absolutely.
had that for year 2 and 3.
You do.
Yes,
It's the
yes, I
full
have it
breakdown.
for all
Yeah.
three. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ms. Power?
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out.
Sorry for all the questions.
No, that's fine.
We'll be seeing y'all soon.
Okay, Ms. Burkhardt for
Yeah, we'll get that
IXL.
oriented.
Good night.
Yes, thank you. Much easier.
If you all want to leave and go, get on the way, you're free to go. You don't have to stay.
Well, thank y'all for y'all's time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good evening again. This evening, I would ask your consideration for the renewal of our IXL formative assessment that we use in grades 6 through 12 for reading and English language arts. The uniqueness about this plan is that the students can actually have a personalized plan that they use throughout the school year. And the total for this quote is $172,500. This is paid for out of Step 7 funds. It is a part of my Step 7 budget. This is the 4th year we have used IXL. Robin Lopez shared some of the data from that as well. We have included some professional development in here with that cost for new teachers new administrators and even permanent substitutes because they are responsible for using this program. So if you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer it, but we hope that you will
Questions?
support.
Questions? IXL is the secondary program.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah, now, I
Yes.
did notice, and you pointed this out, in the past, the schools with the highest IXL scores had the lowest, some of the lowest performance. Like, I remember Musselman High had kind of low IXL scores and a higher performance. And the explanation was, well, you have to have the people who are administering it, getting the pupils on the right level of
Correct.
challenge.
That is absolutely correct.
And so are you all going to address
Yes,
that?
we've had that conversation with our principals as well.
Okay, and what's
Yes.
the outcome of that?
Well, you know what, it kind of goes back to what we're looking at, you know,
Yeah.
that leadership where the principal needs to say to teachers and monitor, this is what we want done. They have access. They can pull this information up and look and see what the teachers have done and to do those walkthroughs to make sure that it's monitored. Some teachers, but let's go back to the professional development piece. They got to know how to use the indicator and know how to use the platform efficiently. And that's why we always include that professional development piece in that. And this group works very well with our county and is very supportive and provides even the department professional development. So we can help support the principals with this as well.
Other questions by members of the board? Ms. Power?
You stole my question.
I'm not going to say a word, I'm going to stay out of it. Okay, thank you for that compliment. Okay, all those in favor of I need a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Martin moves, Ms. Long seconds. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes appear to have the ayes to have declared the motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is an item I've asked to be put on the agenda. On Thursday, the county commission now, they're called the county commission, will be adopting a new subdivision regulations. We had a dialogue with two of the county commission members, Mr. Catlett and Mr. help me out here. Gokenauer, and and one of the items that came up was a new formula for subdivisions, projections, impact upon the school system. And we felt that the numbers that they were using at that time did not accurately reflect the actual impact. This revision that we're going to ask will not stop a subdivision from being approved or disapproved, like, say, the health department or the highway department would do. But it will give us a chance to say, we are saturated, and these numbers that, based upon the formula that we'll be presenting, it's going to have an impact upon the school system. Negative. We're growing faster than we can pass bonds to build new schools. We're doing this. So I'm going to make a motion that the board approved my presenting this formula to the county council on this coming Thursday. I'm going to try to go to the 11 o'clock meeting, but I may have to go to 6 today. But I'm going to try to be at the 11 public hearing. The numbers that are before you were provided by Smith, I believe, the group that did the study for the school system, put the numbers together. And I'm going to take and put these numbers before the county council, asking them to put them into their subdivision regulations, as well as at least having something, as this document says, that we get the information and have input into the process. It will not stop a subdivision from being approved. But at least on the record, we wanna indicate that we're, what the impact will be upon us. Any questions? Okay, I move that the president be authorized to present the information listed under point 1 of this letter. Do I have a second? Ms. Long seconds it. Discussion on the motion? Any questions, Ms. Powell?
No.
Okay. Other members? All those in favor of the motion endorsing the president of the board to present this to the county commission signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes to have declared the motion adopted. Thank you all. 8.7. I think I'm wrong. Yes.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Stevens. The personnel actions dated for Monday, July 10, 2023 are as follows. We have 2 new coaching appointments, 1 resignation of a coach, 1 new extra duty appointment, 5 appointments of professional personnel. 2 individuals are rescinding their appointments with Berkeley County Schools. 5 annual EPIC appointments of their supplements for financial obligations that we provide to EPIC. 2 changes of assignments of professional personnel. 1 policy 5000. 13 professional resignations of professional personnel with 10 transfers of professional personnel. We're asking for 2 new position creations for homebound virtual teachers, 11 new service appointments with 6 change of assignments of service personnel, 9 service personnel changing from one location to another through a transfer. We have a correction of a title and location of a previous transfer. 1 individual to remove from the transfer list and to remain in the assignment that was previously in. 2 resignations of service personnel with 2 retirements of service personnel. 1 individual rescinding their retirement. And then we have 3 new substitute service appointments. 1 correction to an appointment of substitute service, and then because of the rescinding retirement, also rescinding the appointment as a substitute. 1 resignation of a service substitute. 6 new substitute teachers. 3 substitute teachers have renewed their contract obligations, and 1 substitute teacher resigning. For summer, we have 4 new healthcare procedure appointments, 6 new appointments for summer, as well as 1 individual rescinding that appointment for not coming to work. And then we have 1 resignation from a service substitute, for a total of 104 professional service coaching, substitute, and service personnel actions with the superintendent's recommendation.
Yes. Okay, you have the superintendent's recommendation for the personnel. Do I have a motion for the adoption, the passage of the list that's before you?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, the motion been made by Ms. Long, seconded by Mr. Martin. Discussion on the motion.
You know, it's sad to see some of the resignations. I saw one in particular that really is very upsetting. Several of them, really. They're all upsetting, but, you know, when you lose someone that was dedicated over 20 years of service to the system, it's an excellent teacher. It's just heartbreaking.
I did have some question. Did I get a reason for the person that rescinded for the intermediate position, principal position?
Did you give a reason particular? I think Mr. Stevens and teaching and learning communicated with him the most on that one.
We met with the individual, and he, I think he had a better offer.
I assume that.
Yeah, just, yeah. I don't know that officially, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Further questions by members of the board of the personnel
Oh,
list?
get a follow-up. So have we reposted that yet, or?
Yes, it has been reposted and probably almost down, I would say, or close to being down to re-interview, so we can get.
I didn't see it just now.
Is this the time that I can ask the question about the, Jerry's maintenance position? Where we are on that, we've posted the maintenance.
It has been posted and extended to make sure we got a qualified applicable. It's come down. We've got several. We're in the middle of reviewing that right now.
We're
and preparing
organizing
for
the
interviews.
applications and looking at interviews, setting up interviews, yeah.
Further questions of Dr. Schooler or staff? All those in favor, I would just want to echo what you said about Julie Abel, 21 years. It's a public record. We have an outstanding teacher who's left, who's leaving us. And we need to examine, I'm sure she'll take time to write an exit interview and exit form. And if you would share that with us. But like Ms. Long said, we have a number of people here. We're losing even assistant principals in this list. You know, we're losing our bench as well as our starting five here, if we're talking basketball. And support people. It's almost like we're in that ship that imploded down in the depths. The stress on our system and the impact upon our students it's not just a piece of paper we're voting on here. There's lives being impacted, people with experience leaving us, and it just seems it's, I don't want to say overwhelming, because we have to be positive and try to solve these problems, but substitutes, bus drivers, teachers, leaders, this is just it's kind of like an exercise of a thousand small slices on us as a body at this loss. And we've got to find ways. If we can't pay them, I heard it in earlier here. There's a loyalty to leadership sometimes. There's people want to stay with the team. At the end of this summer, I hope you can give us a list of the resignations by school and mobility. That helps us see, well, why are they leaving that school? But some of it is not within that school. It's just the external pressures upon the employees. So I appreciate what was said, not only about a couple individuals, but the impact upon all our people. And I know it's more than just a paper exercise here. It's a big, big impact upon our people. All those in favor of voting for the superintendent's recommendation signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Declare that the ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Dr. School. Okay, board announcements. Do any of you have an announcement?
I just have one. So on July 19th, I'm leaving River Riders. I accepted a position in Virginia Fern Association. So I no longer have to recuse myself in Consetta Jones for River Riders. No.
Okay, Ms. Power, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
Okay. Our thoughts are still with your family, ma'am.
Thank you.
All of us are.
All of us are. I just want to announce that Mr. Stevens and I attended a meeting today, and it was a joint meeting with superintendents and school board presidents, a very good meeting. And one of the things that's available for you board members is a handbook that's been put together on the website for board members. It asks all kinds of questions. You name it, it's in there. And it'll help you a lot. If you're asking for, it's ethics questions, school law. So I just wanted to call that to your attention.
It's on the School Board Association.
It's on the School Board Association.
I saw it, I didn't look at it, but.
Okay, and one thing I'd like to ask, it's 10 o'clock here. Our staff has stayed long. They have to be at work at 8:30 in the morning. I'd like to ask our.
Before that.
Before that.
Yeah.
It's 6:45.
I'd like to ask the superintendent if he could work with staff and see if there was a way of letting people at least get a little rest after working a full day here, there, and then staying up.
I was gonna ask you the same thing. There's a way.
Well, I'll be honest with you. If you were, it's not on the agenda, but if you put this on the next agenda, if you work till 10 o'clock at night here, then you come to work tomorrow at 10 o'clock. That's my solution. But I don't know whether that would make the system be able to function.
It certainly would cause a problem for the meetings we have tomorrow morning.
Well, I mean, schedule, keep your Tuesday mornings.
I appreciate the
I mean,
the invitation.
can't
We
do it
will
right
look
now.
into it.
Yeah, if you can look at something there, I think that would be fair.
Being here doesn't reduce the amount of work that needs to be done between 8 and 4, though. That's the only
Well,
problem.
I understand that, but I'm just saying if there's a way, when these people go on vacation, it's waiting on when they get back.
Yeah, we used to do it. So
You're exactly right.
Yeah, it's waiting on. Okay, Mr. Superintendent, as your first meeting as a full bona fide superintendent, do you have any announcements?
I have a couple of announcements. First of all, yes, the meeting that we went to was beneficial. It was good to see everybody down there, the presidents of the boards and the new superintendents. I just wanted to give you kind of a case for education as a whole. Last year, there were 6 new superintendents at the new superintendents meeting, which is scheduled in August, and I was one of them. And this year, there are 20. 20.
Out of 55.
Out of 55 counties, there are 20. So,
That goes along with the list of resignations.
yes, and that is, I don't believe that is someone who has experience in West Virginia has moved to another county. So that's 20 that are new, and then I believe there are additional who have shuffled from one place to another. So the leadership in the state, I would say that we're close to 50% of the counties are under new leadership. So just want to throw that out there. I'll be brief. Just want to, don't forget to enroll students for those people who are still listening to us. If you're new to the area or you need some help, check out our webpage. There's information on there about making sure that you've registered your vehicle in West Virginia, but there's also additional information that will help you get your student registered at the appropriate school. If you need assistance with that, contact us at the central office and we can hook you up with the right person. Want to go to the dates to remember. Just looking ahead, August the 14th is the first day back for employees. And then we've got a list of orientations for schools. Middle school orientation is on the 15th. High school and intermediate school orientations will be on the 16th. Primaries are going to be held on the 17th. All of those are scheduled right now between 5 and 7. And I think they're all going to stay there between 5 and 7 this year. We've toyed with moving them around at different times, and moving one just causes a problem for somebody else. So between 5 and 7. And then August the 21st, first day back for students. So just want to let you know that is fast approaching. Our next regular scheduled meeting is on the 24th of July. It will be in this room at 7 o'clock. That's all I had for you.
I guess they give me information, Elaine, on the new teacher orientation or breakfast or lunch or, you know, any idea when that is?
I'm not looking at the calendar, but I think it's like the second Friday.
In August?
The new teacher breakfast is hosted by the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be sending something out, I think it's the 11th.
Okay, I'm just curious. You know, that would be here for you.
Yeah.
You're- I have a doctor's appointment that day, so you'll have to fill in for
That's all I had.
me. Okay, a motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Good night. Thank you, staff, for sticking around.